You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and now it's time for the Paranormal Peep Show.
Hi, welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and this is our Christmas edition. My name is Neil Ward, and we are joined by regular hosts Andy Chaplin. Hi, Andy. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas to you too, Neil. But unfortunately, not a happy Christmas to the majority of the UK, thanks to crazy communist Keir Starmer, who's rattled. Let's see who he's rattled so far. So he's rattled pensioners. He's rattled students. He's rattled farmers now. That's the latest one. Who else is he going to rattle with his communist lightsaber?
Oh, probably the communists. Yeah. He's rattled quite a few cages, and he's only been in the job 5 months. So, yeah, I think next year he'll be into phase 2 of his complete annihilation of the UK, which would be interesting.
He tried a relaunch recently, didn't he? A quotation relaunch, because it's going so badly for him. He wants to reset it. I could think of another word beginning with "re" that he should do, which is maybe resign.
Yeah. Oh, I thought he was going to be talking some other part of the body anatomy, but we won't go there. Ben, how are you? Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas, Neil. Happy Christmas, Andy and Gary. I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I'm good to be back in the Christmas season. It's kind of been a while, hasn't it, since the last one?
Well, yeah, it's been 12 months.
It feels like less than that. It really does. I mean, time, notional time is still accelerating in my view. It didn't slow down after 2012. If anything, the quickening has continued. And I see no sign of it abating. So
I think we should have Christmas 25 in about 6 months then. Really.
Yeah, I mean, literally, it feels that way. I don't know if that's ever going to change or not. But
We're in a parallel universe right now since 2012, Ben.
Well, according to the what is it they call the many worlds hypothesis, we're continuously moving from one universe to another, and it's every single moment new universes are branching off the main one. So it's that's what the Mandela effect is, I think.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
We are definitely not experiencing the reverse quickening that was predicted. So that's a shame. It means it's notional time. When notional time speeds up, it means everything else speeds up, including everything we do and say, and our life expectancy and things like that. But that's the world we live in. Can't be out.
There's one man that moves between many different worlds, and that's Mexico, Hemel Hempstead, and more recently he's been to Italy to pizza, which is our guest returning, Gary Robinson.
How you doing, Neil? Good to see you, mate. And it does seem like just weeks since we were here doing the last Christmas show. I don't know how that works, but yeah, time speed up.
Yeah, but it does. So you've just come back from pizza, was it? Where the Leaning Tower pizza.
That's right, the Leaning Tower, which is surprisingly sturdy, actually. Well, not enough. When you actually see it, it's pretty thick and heavy granite. Yeah.
And so the guy that made it, was he drunk, do you think, when he made that?
Maybe he had a trick up his sleeve. I don't know.
How do they keep that tower at that angle for all that time and it hasn't fallen down? I don't know.
Oh, they always
see it.
Yeah, they're propping it up. They use props, and they're
artificially.
They're also doing something with the foundation underneath it to kind of support it as well. So the reason why it leans like that is they built it straight, and then for some reason there was subsidence underneath, and then it gradually started leaning over and continued to start leaning over. But they are trying to kind of fix it and stop that from happening.
I've been there.
Yeah. Now, with that, can you actually go up in the tower, or is it not accessible?
You can. Well, you could go up there. When I was there, I didn't fancy going up there, but I did notice there's a recent drama on Apple TV can't remember what it was called, but it had Kate Blanchett in it. And there's a scene where a character is at the top of the tower, dangling his feet over the edge and writing in a notebook. And that seemed to be an actual shot from the top. And I did see people, but I thought, nah, that's not for me, you know.
We're all good and dandy. So I thought I'd get our show on the road because with tradition, there's always mince pies around the Christmas time. So these handy mince pies brought to you by, who made them? I think it was Morrison's. So we are not sponsored by Morrison's, but these are lovely Morrison's mince pies. So I'm going to hand them through our celestial time maginator, which is basically Skype in most people's words. So if I try and get this open, and I'll hand each of you a mince pie. Feel free to take one, gentlemen. There we go.
Not for me, thanks.
Oh, Ben, you're not having one. Why is that?
Believe it or not, and I love them. I'm actually I'm on a detox, which is it's sometimes confused with a diet, but I think I've shocked Andy so much now. he can't even swallow his pie. Yeah, it's a bit. It's not a diet. It's an affirmation. It's something occult I'm doing at the moment, which is just to control what I eat, just not for the purpose of losing weight. Although I have actually lost a lot of weight. That's a side effect, not the reason I'm doing it. I just want to put out energy into the universe so that good things happen, basically.
And how did you hear of this dietary occult thing?
Reading a book.
Yeah,
it was reading a book called The Occult, and it's by Colin Wilson, who was a hospital porter, as well as being very, very famous in the sort of woo-woo world. He was a hospital porter, so he knows what he's talking about. Believe me, I always accept the word of a brother every time.
Do you know what the word occult actually means, Ben?
Hidden.
Yeah, hidden. So most people think it's kind of devil worship and demons and that kind of thing. No, it just means hidden. Something that's hidden.
It's interesting because people think when people think of a cult, they think of Aleister Crowley with a crystal ball, sniffing heroin and having sex with a goat on an altar in Easter. But no, you don't have to do that to do anything occult. He was very advanced. He was very, very powerful. But every time if you blow out your birthday candles and someone says make a wish and you do it, you've done something occult.
Yeah.
And people do these sorts of things all the time. It's the basis of most superstitions. And you believe it or not, there is some reason to think that it can have an effect. It can have an effect on your life and on the life and the world around you. So for instance, if you blow out your candles and what happens, it could be what you wish for comes true. Now you may be just lucky, or it may be a direct mental intention of connected with your birthday that caused it to happen. How do you know which is which?
And of anyone of a Christian disposition, which is fine, who might want to criticize people who take part in quote occult rituals, we'll have a look at drinking the blood of Christ and eating the body of Christ on an altar with a chalice and bread. I mean, if that's not occult, then
yeah. I'm gonna take. I don't push it too hard. Like if I go on holiday, I'll take some time off, as I am doing it this weekend when I go to the Basis Project conference. I'm also taking a week off for Christmas, but I'm ending it all on the 20th of January, when Trump gets inaugurated. That seems like kind of fitting. It's a fitting moment,
cool moment to celebrate your.
That is kind of the whole point of it. Is kind of connected to that.
Ben, would you fill up your chalice full of liberal tears on that particular day?
Oh, I could
liberal blood anymore?
I don't have to drink anymore.
You're not going to dye your hair blue in protest and get a mulching.
George Monbiot is my favourite. I mean, his lament is just hilarious. I mean, I don't take pleasure in other people's suffering, except this time.
And was it saying
he deserves it because he bloody deserves it?
Go ahead, Gary.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. I'm getting a few dropouts. I was just saying, Ben, I missed the start of what you were saying, but did you mean that you were doing the detox so that the physical clean out affects the sort of non-physical side of things for the better?
That's what I'm hoping for. Yeah, that's why I'm doing it. Yeah.
That kind of connects with the little story that I've got to tell later on.
Cool.
So right,
Look into that and
look forward to hearing that. Yeah.
So, with the I'm just wondering, is there any symbolism in the eating of mince pies as we done? What does that mean? Like you talked about blowing out of candles on birthdays. Is there?
Christmas is full of these things. I mean, like, for example, it's simply I think it's just simply people's feelings about Christmas, about coming back to the family and having family times together and things like that. And also, what follows Christmas immediately is the New Year, which is, of course, a much bigger thing in Scotland than it is in England. But we still do things like make New Year's resolutions. And that's another act of occultism. It's obviously, there's nothing necessarily supernatural about that. It's not superstition. It's simply promising yourself you'll do something in the coming year. And New Year's resolutions tend to be it's not hoping for something ephemeral and uncontrolled out there to go your way. It's saying, I'm going to do this. It's a commitment to taking action. It's a statement of commitment to taking action. But the fact you do it when a new year starts is significant on an occult level.
I mean, there's a few other things we could add as well. I mean, there was no mention in the Bible at all of when Jesus was actually born. In fact, I think it's the Quran that says that it might be in around about July time. I've also heard possibly September time. But I'll tell you what is in December, Yuletide, which is a pagan tradition. So the Christians came along and basically said, no, we'll have Yuletide. That's going to be ours now. That's when.
Well, it's the same with Easter as well, wasn't it? Well, it's just actually from the Austria. Yeah, the Sunny was the Easter hare or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, the reason the 25th. Sorry, Andy, but there's a. Do you mind me saying?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a reason why Jesus was born on the 25th of December, which is the same reason why I think Horus and Mithra and all these other sacred sun gods were born on the 25th of December. It's 3 days after the winter solstice, and in these much older myths than Christianity, this was when the sun was said to be reborn after being in the earth for 3 days. Of course, Jesus was in the belly of the earth for 3 days, wasn't he?
Yeah. Like, at this point, I would very much get people to have a look at the documentary Zeitgeist. You've probably seen that, Ben and
yeah.
But this goes into all of the ancient mythical characters and their similarities with Jesus. For the record, I want to say that I'm not anti-Jesus. I am anti-religion, man-made religion, generally speaking. And I am a spiritual person trying to follow a spiritual path. But yeah, I would say that the Christian faith and possibly quite a few other faiths either share similar attributes or are basically knockoff copies of ancient religions in my personal opinion. And you've also got things like the Christmas tree as well, and even the tinsel that goes around the Christmas tree. So the Christmas tree was celebrated in Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, that kind of thing. And the tinsel was originally the entrails of sacrificed animals by the pagans, who they used to wrap around the Christmas trees. You also got the star you mentioned, like Easter Star. This goes back to kind of like Ishtar, over this kind of thing. I would really get people to look into not only Zeitgeist, but also people like David Icke. Jordan Maxwell is a big one in terms of going into this kind of thing. But there's so much hidden symbolism, and most people have no clue about this. They wander around their shopping malls, they'll just see Father Christmas, ho ho ho, and they have no idea what it's all about, really.
That's true. I like to echo that. I don't have anything against people for what they believe in terms of their faith. I wouldn't call myself an atheist. That would be inaccurate. But I myself don't follow those religions myself.
If Jesus did exist, hands up and thumbs up to him and shake his hand. Thank you, great, fantastic. However, what I would say is that there are many prophets and spiritual people who have come to earth to try and help people, not just Jesus, and not just the other ones. Whether it's Muhammad or Moses or Krishna or whoever, they've all come with spiritual messages, and it's basically a case of there's good and there's bad in everything. There's good and bad in the Bible and in the Torah and the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita, if I've pronounced that correctly. And it's basically, I think the true spiritual path is looking at everything as a whole, and almost like a pick and mix, picking out the good parts of the parts that resonate with you personally, and basically putting the trash in the bin. And when I say trash in the bin, I would say things like Deuteronomy, where it says that if you've got a disobedient child, you take them to the gates of your town and you stone them to death. I don't think that should probably be in the Bible, personally. But,
they do have problems with that one, trying to explain those things away, don't they? The Old
yeah.
Testaments.
I mean, the thing is, the Bible's split into two, isn't it? You've got the New Testament The Old Testament. The New Testament is fine. Jesus, love your neighbor, everything's great, fantastic. The Old Testament is the fire and brimstone bit, and that's the bit where you stone your children to death if they're disobedient. What is that doing in a holy book?
Well, it's because it comes from the Middle East, and the Middle East is where these things were commonplace: stoning, beheading, people, crucified. That's right. There's a lot of medieval kind of debauchery out in the Middle East.
Unfortunately, this happens here. It's Middle East is a very unstable part of the world, and it's still, as we've seen just in the last few days. There's been this insurrection in Syria, which has came out of nowhere. It's and we see this repeated across the world at the moment. So I think we're living in a time of great hope at the moment, especially since November. But
if you were to make a prediction, Ben, how long do you think Starmer's got in? Because he is so dangerous for this country. How long do you think before he's out?
Oh dear. As soon as possible. I mean, when as soon as he started on his horrible campaign, I remember thinking to myself, he's only just been elected. We can't put up with another 4 3/4 years of this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know how we can get rid of him, because of course he has just won an election. But I'm a great believer in things coming out of left field.
And he could get ousted by his own party. I mean, that's happened to the Conservative.
I think there's going to be the Labour Party is going to split. Now their common enemies, the various factions in the Labour Party, their common enemy has been defeated. That is the Tories. The Tories have been bashed down to almost nothing. As a result, there's going to be there was always has been factions in the Labour Party. You remember the Gang of Four from the 80s and the militant tendency and the SDP. This is still going on now. We have the left-wing Corbynites, and then of course they have the Blairite, the centrist Blairites. But then you also have like the Labour Jewish movement, and of course a vast Islamist tendency in Labour too. And the Jews and the Muslims are going to come to blows over Israel. That's already happening. It's already happening now. And I think these gaps are going to deepen and widen to the point where the party may well simply break apart. Yeah.
Because Reform have now overtaken them in the polls. That Conservative, I think Kemi is the right person for the job, and I do like Kemi so far. What she said, I do like, but I think Reform is the way forwards. Really,
yeah.
Got to get rid of the communists.
Kemi Badenoch is, if only for entertainment value. It's just the look of Diane Abbott's face is just poetry.
And it's sort of in a ring together, wasn't it?
Yeah,
just a little punch up.
And David Lammy, these horrible people who just say whenever they just keep accusing other people of racism all the time. You must be a white supremacist. Oh, hang on a moment. And they have yeah. I mean, the problem with Kemi Badenoch is two problems. Firstly, she's weakened a lot since she first came on the scene and started running for leadership. Secondly, her ascendancy is about 3 years too late. She should have come in straight in when if she'd gone in there when Boris cucked and started, Boris Johnson became betrayed and stabbed us all in the back. That would be things could have been better then, but they weren't to be. Well, she's a contradictory figure because she herself is a product of mid-20th century immigration policy. Yet there's no law saying that black women have to all be like Diane Abbott. They have agency, and she herself has chosen a different side out of conviction. And she can't choose who she is or what she is, but she can choose who she is, and she can choose what side she takes.
Yeah,
and I think there's hope with Kemi Badenoch, actually. Yeah,
I hope so.
Time will tell. So, just a quick one before we go to our first segment of the program. We had a visit from the Jehovah's Witnesses. Getting back to the religious side of things, about a few days ago, they, of course, so you don't know they're going to knock at the door, but they knock at the door, and it's two old ladies, and we're trying to keep the door shut. To keep the cold out because the house now it's freezing cold now, and the dog's trying to get out as well. And my wife was trying to keep the door from me from seeing them because she knows as soon as I see them, I want to open the door and start debating them for about a good hour. And so I was obviously prevented from doing so to keep the heat in, basically. But I wonder if they actually deliberately go around in the winter months so that you'll invite them in to stop the cold. And then that way they've gotten you. It's their kind of policy or something, But yeah, I do wonder about these Jehovah's Witnesses, whether on a losing cause or not, because they always try and say or point to any incident that's happening that's in the times. And oh, this is it. This is the end times coming. I mean, like 35 years ago, I had a knock on the door from Jehovah's Witnesses. Fortunately, it was in the summertime, so I chat to them more. And it was the time the Berlin Wall was coming down, and the guy was pointing at the TV saying, "This is the start of the end times. It's all going to happen this summer." And of course, nothing happened. The Berlin Wall came down, and that was the collapse of communism. But really, the world went on, really. So
They don't celebrate Christmas as well.
no, that's right. Yeah, they don't celebrate Christmas. They don't celebrate birthdays, as we mentioned earlier. And if someone sneezes, they don't say "bless you."
Oh, that's interesting. Why is that?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know the reasoning behind that, but I think it's something to do with the only person that could bless you is actually God the Father. That's the idea. So no one else can say bless you, and you can't be blessed by a religious priest, I suppose, in that sort of context.
Don't they believe that only 144,000 souls are going to make it to heaven?
Something like that, yeah. But there's actually a lot more, isn't there?
Gary's trying to speak, but we can't hear him.
So is my mic?
Well, you can hear now.
Here now, yeah.
I'm seeing some glitching on the screen. My mic icon going on and off.
Oh,
Weird. Yeah. So maybe I try reconnecting with the Bluetooth, and you can.
No, it's okay. We can hear you now.
Yeah. Yeah. It just occurred to me that I went to school with a Jehovah's Witness guy. He used to tell me that they unofficially had Christmas, but if someone was sick, they had rules in regards to treatment, so they would let people suffer because it was their philosophy, and I always thought that was pretty barbaric. I mean,
Yeah, they don't do blood transfusions and that kind of stuff.
that's it.
yeah.
Do they?
What's weird about them is, I mean, I used to know, well, I saw a friend who was from a Jehovah's Witness family, is that I went to visit the national headquarters, and they have branches all over the world. And I was surprised about how upmarket it was. It was set in a very large estate in, I think it was Mile End in London. And there's like a huge building, which is like a book publishers and printers. And across the road, there's like another big centre, and they have these kingdom halls everywhere, which are like churches. And they tend to be very nice. They're elaborate buildings with nice grounds and things like that. And I did wonder, you see, because I went in there and spoke to a couple of people, and they ended up giving me 2 books. One of them was like a hardback leather-bound Bible, or I don't know what they call it. It's like the Bible. It's pretty similar. And I just wonder, where's all the money coming from? You can steal it.
It's from people joining, basically. This is why they have to go door to door. They're essentially salespeople to the Jehovah Witness Kingdom thing, and it's all sort of based on a headquarters somewhere in New York, I think. They call them the elder people that run it, but it's a big publishing empire. And
I don't know if any of you ever seen the Book of Mormon. It's like a musical. It's showing in London. The Mormon, like the Church of Latter-day Saints, is similar to the Jehovah's Witnesses. It sort of emerged around the same time. It has similar beliefs, but it's just really, it's like a comedy musical. It's very funny about the Mormons. You know?
yeah, again, I had Mormons knock on my door once.
I think I'm right. Now, I don't know if I'm 100% right. I think I'm right in saying that the where they're getting their money from is they try and convince people to either hand over all their money or leave everything in their will to the church. I could be wrong in that, and if I'm wrong, then fine. But there is definitely one religion or belief system where it's basically give all your money away and leave it all in your will, and just screw your kids kind of thing.
That's probably what it is. Yeah, and I mean it was because it is a very, very upmarket organisation with very well funded, quite clearly, and
Well, they do as well to be in the church. From what my friend used to tell me, to leave in money in a will, they have to pay, I don't know, like a monthly due or whatever. That's it.
Oh, like tithing or something. Yeah.
Church, is it really? You go in the Catholic church and they come around with a thing asking for cash,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, usually people just put a couple of quid in the bag, but I think in the Jehovah's Witnesses they probably put a lot more. I mean, the book was.
Go on, Ben.
So the book they gave me, the Bible, it is just literally like a Bible. It has some artwork in it, which is clearly based on the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, this is all the paintings they do with people laying down with lions and lambs.
Yeah, but apart from that, I mean, it has the word Jehovah instead of God. Of course, Jehovah is, as Monty Python hilariously points out, Jehovah is the word for God, but it's blasphemy to say it. It is. He's the God of Israel is called Jehovah, yeah. But they actually use that word in this particular book, which is just apart from that, it looks just like a normal Bible to me. I don't need it, but I've read the normal Bible and it just looked like the same thing.
Yeah, it's interesting chatting to them. This is why I always like a little debate with them, because generally 9 times out of 10 I've had a debate with them and asked them really difficult questions, and they don't know what to think. They can't answer them, and so they say, "Oh, we'll come back with an answer," but they never do because no one knows back at their base about what answers they can give. So they just kind of avoid me. Anyway, I think it's about time we went to our first interview. So a few weeks ago, I sat down over Skype and chatted with the Kinsella twins. That's Philip and Ronnie Kinsella of Bedfordshire. Philip is a medium, but he's also a researcher and author into UFOs, as is his brother Ronnie. So I spent a good 40 or 50 minutes chatting with them about what they've been up to this year and what are their plans for next. So take a look at this. Well, here we are with Ronnie and Philip Kinsella from Bedfordshire. They are the, well, you could call them the Kinsella twins, or the psychic twins, or the UFO twins, because they crop up in many fields of psychic and UFO related activity. And they're also the rock bottom twins. They are the originators of the rock bottom twins, who, but adventures of these treacherous of twins always getting into trouble by creating mayhem with robots that go awry. Yeah, so you've been busy this year, both of you, with different various projects. Philip, you've been busy with a number of books, and you're working on one called The Avatar, The Eternal Avatar. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, I've almost finished it, with my co-author Chris John Mays, and that will be completed, I think, the first week in December. And we've been sending the subsequent chapters to the publisher in America. And that should be released in July of 2025. So there was a wrangling with another publisher. I kept this very quiet, but I didn't want anything to do with them because it was all a bit wavery. So I've gone with someone else. And so that's near to completion. And I've finished some filming this year with some production companies on UFOs, most notably Rendlesham. And I had to go to the studios to get that finished. So it's in a few articles published abroad in Italian and Spanish magazines. So it's been all right. It's been good, but also I think quite a stressful year in terms of the energies, I think, around the world and with what's going on. But but I have plans for other projects with regards to the next book after this one. So it's like I've got a list of them.
Wow. It's good to have a list. It's good to always add the next thing to go on to, so you're not sort of sitting there dragging your knuckles and thinking, what can I do next? So the Eternal Avatar, are we allowed to know a little bit about what its direction it's heading in?
Yeah, by the way, your book.
Oh, yeah.
Published book is amazing, incredible. It's amazing. I do have a copy of the book somewhere because I've almost finished reading it. Truth Tales of the Paranormal by Neil Ward, and a wonderful book. Arcticus, isn't it? I think
Arcturus Press.
Arcturus, that's how you pronounce it. So yeah, the Eternal Avatar deals specifically in making the individual aware of their inherent greatness. That is to say, it looks into the human soul and the spirit, because contrary to popular belief, there are differences to be had between one to the other. And it deals with the incarnation, reincarnation process, as well as tackling the theories of why we're here, why we go through amnesia when we incarnate into this realm, and also dealing with the fact that we are avatars ourselves, that we are here to build upon our eternal greatness, our magnificence. So the book is an overall picture of what we are, not just as a biological automaton, which the system that we serve has so reminded us, and also arguing with regards to the chaos theory and the Sunday school version, because the system that we serve loves anything and everything, as long as it doesn't have any proof. So with faith, it's quite happy with that. So we battle the fact that our genesis is very different to what we've been told and sold, so to speak, and it explores the why we're here and the possible war that seems to be going on a subliminal level, a psychological level, utilized as a weapon that's been going on by another darker force that's been here for a very long time, and might answer some truly extraordinary questions with regards to the subject matters that's in the book itself. So yeah, that's an overall picture of it.
Is it a just difficult book to write because it's with a co-writer?
No, actually, it was quite a dream, actually, to be honest with you, because we had the chapter synopses, we had a construct of what to write about, and me and Chris are on the same page with regards to the psychic component. So it flowed really nicely. We just generated ideas, brought them together, and then we constructed the chapters. Then I'd pass them to him, and he'd pass them back to me, and we'd flow it through that way. So it's hard to write in terms of getting the research done and all the rest, but it was easy to write with a co-author, because sometimes with a co-author it can be very difficult. And we do have another author who is writing the foreword to the book, and we have an artist already from Canada who's going to construct the cover of the book as well too. So yeah.
Wow. And what's Chris's background in all this? Is it UFOs or spiritualism?
Yeah, in all of those subject matters, he's been very much involved with the paranormal and with the UFO, very open-minded, very psychic. And, and there's a story behind how we met up, because there are synchronicities linked there and how we connected. And then we decided, well, let's write a book. And of course, there were subject matters that we're all interested in. But it's interesting to see people's takes on it, because Chris actually records his incarnation process. He actually remembers that, whereas most people don't. They remember past lives or fragments of past lives. So he remembers actually coming from the state of where he was and then traversing through space, which was quite a terrifying experience from this memory that he had as a child and then growing up as an adult. So it is quite interesting, and also tackling not just the incarnation process. It also looks into historical factors like Thoth, who never came through the normal reproductive processing. He appeared from light. Thoth was the Egyptian deity and the scribe, and has a colorful history in terms of this ancient knowledge. So it's kind of like looking at some of the past, some of the present, and looking into other areas of reasoning behind incarnation and reincarnation. And this may answer some truly extraordinary questions about current states and affairs with regards to what we call the UFOs and the paranormal. And because he argued the case that they've been segmented into separate categories when there could be key connections which link them to interdimensional within their reality. So it's a book that carries certain theories, and for the reader to decide for themselves. We're not telling them what it is. It's up to the reader to decide.
Wow. And when is that due out?
June, July. I think it's July they want to bring it out, because they want to do it as audio as well as paperback, Kindle, and hardback. So we're almost there completing the project, and then of course from that point onwards it is going to editorial even as we speak, as we finish each chapter that's been submitted and worked on. So we're kind of like working together as a group to get it done. So yeah,
and all the proofreading and corrections, all this kind of thing. Yeah. I've got that to go on the second book that I'm doing, which is Unsolved Modern Mysteries, for the same publisher. So that'd be coming out probably about the same time as your Avatar book, actually, about the summer of next year. So that's already been resubmitted now as a kind of completed chapters, but I will probably maybe December or January be working on the proofreading side of things with the proof editor and changes and things.
But I have to thank you also, because you contributed a wonderful piece in the book, which is in there. And that is to do with, afterlife and thoughts on that. And that is wonderful. So I will just tell your viewers that Neil here, not only the author of the wonderful books that's just come out and the future ones, but also made another contribution. And of course, you were in Guardians of the Dead as well, too. You helped me with that. Remember, you went through all of that. And that was superb. So we go back in time with our connections on a literary level, as well as not just being great mates, helping out with the art and also with the literature. So you know as well as we do that it can be a very time-consuming process. And when people say, oh, it's easy to write a book, no, it's not.
No, it's, the the book that I wrote, actually, you know, if you think about it, it's a lifetime of processes, because it's all these experiences you've taken from childhood right up to your adult days that you sometimes will put in books. And, you know, you remember certain things that happened in your teens or as a youngster that you might put in the book, a certain psychic experience or something like that. It all goes into the factory that churns it out at the end, doesn't it?
And your book is a very big book, and it's a beautiful book. I mean, it's beautiful the way the publishers have done it. I love it. I love the look of it, and the way it is. It's beautiful. So yeah, well,
I just hope that people don't get nightmares reading it. It wasn't written as a horror book or anything, although I do have I think that who's it, Forbidden Planet Bookshop, they've listed it as horror because they haven't got a category for paranormal, which is a bit of a strange one, but there we go. At least they're stocking it, which is nice.
oh yeah, I mean, you can get it on Amazon now. I think, you know, it's like any book. Ours, when we were, you know, had publishers before in the past with the contractual publishers, I mean, it was a nightmare getting hold of it. And then, of course, it's any author's worst nightmare when people say, oh, we can't get hold of it. And they're like breathing down your neck, well, where's the book? And then all of a sudden, when it comes out, you know, it's there, and then people forget that. So it's an honor. And I think for us, as well as for you, because you were published before by one of the big Hay House, big publishing companies, but your book is beautiful, and of course the publishers do some really wonderful books in the line of what they're bringing out, and we can't wait to read your next one as well too.
So, you know, it's funny, when I actually got the book in my hands, I look at it and I didn't read it. Do you know why? I might find a mistake and go, oh my God.
No, it's perfect. I want my
But anyway, thank you. So, Ronnie, what have you been up to this last year? I know we've been chatting over email, and you've been getting a new 3D printer and creating wonderful artworks within your ZBrush, and you've been working that for like 12 years, 11 years or something like that now, isn't it? So you're really practiced that, aren't you?
Yes, I branched in rather than out, because I tend to find that the UFOs and all that are out, and science fiction is in. So I branched in. But I've got some, apart from the ZBrush, which I'm using now, I've just finished a science fiction novella, which took me 3 years to work on, mainly because I was stuck on the ending, and it came about just blindly, and I realized that was it, the cue I needed. The book is probably about 120 pages long. It's not very big, but enough for a train trip or an aircraft trip, you know, someone sitting on there. But I'm planning, before I find anyone for it, that someone has made a proposal to publish it. Not one of the big giants, not one of the major publishers. I'd heard nothing from them, although we had an agent in London many years ago, but sadly they retired, Mary Martinez. We had an agency in London, but they've retired, so they couldn't take it on. So I've been looking for an agent, and I've tried 7 and no luck, but it's okay. I mean, we're quite used to it. You know, it's very cutthroat. It's not personal, but the book is based on a dystopian future. I know it's common. I know it's been done to death, but this has a twist. I'm not going to give that twist away. I didn't even tell the agents that twist, because they don't want anyone nicking it. Look, I'll speak ill of them. No one's nicking it. But I'm illustrating this, so I thought a smattering of pictures within this book, because you're like yourself, you're a brilliant artist, you're Money. I can't do people very well, that I can get away with it with things that like the side angle of people, or, you know, it is going to be illustrated. So I'm going to do them kind of graphic-y, but using ZBrush. One man accused me of using AI with my art, and I thought, well, yeah, no, mate. It took me, as you correctly stated, 12 years to master this, and even that is still, to me, not good enough, because you just find yourself pushing and pushing. You know, you've always learned new things, and it is like when you do a painting, I appreciate it because it's, you know, you do it, and then you think, oh, is that good enough? You know, like you said about your book, we were the same. I frightened to open it, to look at it, because of but that's just part in being artistic. It's just, that's what it is. So that's what I've been doing. I've been working on this science fiction novella, and I am actually planning after that to do a comic book, an actual comic book. I've never thought of this before, of the Rock Bottom Twins.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. So we haven't heard the last of them then. They will return.
No, I had this because they were first published in 2006. Boogle and Kingsman, the gentleman, the grumpy old man who built this robot as a work-saving device to act as an unpaid skivvy, and to, when the people are away, they use it to clean up homes and get the money, but it does something terrible to one of the houses. So I had this picture in my head. I saw it all last year of the men looking ahead in this dingy hallway. They did in a big ramshackle house that's all run down. And down the hallway with the torn wallpaper and a dim light, it's like a Frankenstein monster, their new creation, standing in the distance looking at them, ramshack the robot. You know, although it was published in 2006, we have all the rights, so we can develop it as a comic book. And I think kids will love that. Toned down, of course, politically correct, of course. Yeah, that was a bit ambitious, I would say. So that's what I've been doing and planning now.
Excellent, excellent. So, for the Rock Bottom Twins resurface, do you think next year as a book?
It won't be next year. I think because these illustrations for the science fiction novella, the short book, will take at least until summer. Then it may be published hopefully by winter. I can start the comic book by summer, but as you well know and Moni know, art takes ages, even with ZBrush. But what I plan to do, what's clever about the ZBrush, is the fact that I can build all the models first, have alternate arms, postures, build the robot, and then the houses. Then we can twist and change them. As you know, the models for the 3D application, they can be swapped and changed, and you can add them in. It's like it's just clever CGI work where you move in your artwork, these models, and you can change the angle and the lighting and things like that. And I plan for it to be perhaps about 32 pages long. And I'm going to try a major publisher with that, a comic book publisher. They call them graphic novels. I don't like that. I don't like the comic books, you know?
Yeah. I tend to find that the graphic novels, and I don't buy them, but when I flick through them at stores like Forbidden Planet, they tend to do loads of them there. They always tend to be dark kind of stories, don't they? Dark and Batman-ish or something, you know. Very well done for what the market is. Extremely well done. But yeah, I can see what you're saying.
Very gothic.
Yes, yeah. And of course, you've got the extension part moving out from ZBrush. You've got now the 3D printer, which you ordered, and one went missing, didn't it? The 3D printer went missing.
Yes. Well, it was, as the Joker from Batman would say, the original one, it was perfect. It went missing, but in all fairness to them, they got me another one straight away, and I have to commend their service. They were wonderful, Neil. They were absolutely, although I was angry, it wasn't their fault. You can't blame them. It's the delivery process. You can't blame the delivery man. It was just pilfered. They wouldn't state that, but we know what happened. But they were wonderful. They got me you, and yes, I mean, I've got plans to build the twins and their robot, but not just yet. I'm going to get this comic book done, and then to try and promote it or hype it, these things can be built. But of course, using ZBrush, when you've developed the models of them, you can produce them as three-dimensional resin kind of replicas, you know.
Yeah.
And judging, I mean, my printer's probably about just under 12 inches tall. So in order to make a model double that size, if I wanted a big one, I've had to split the model. And I've got to find out how to do that. I'm still not absolutely 100% on how to do that, you know. So you learn, don't you? You learn.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I came back from Finland after doing a UFO conference. So I spoke there, and it was wonderful. They were absolutely amazing. They looked after me like the crown jewels. But I went with another chap there, bless him, and he took me to my favorite children's author, Tove Jansson, that we call her here in England, of the Moomins, created the Moomins, and her family of artists. And so I went to her museum and saw all the models that they have created. They're in big glass cabinets. But I also found the grave of Tove Jansson, which I remembered I was brought in contact with her work when I was all but around 8 or 9 years of age. And our teacher, Mrs. Sampson, God love her, read out the Miming Midsummer Madness. And And I remembered the book after she'd read it to the class through weeks. You know, you have the storytelling, and he has a jumble cell table. I used to love jumble cells, and it was all but 5p. Mum bought it for me, and I love that book. And then, of course, since then, number 78 was that 78, and since then, I've collected everything of her literature and work, and all the biographies and everything. So it was very strange. I did take a picture and I put it online of me standing by her tomb, and it was a very moving moment because in you know, her life, you saw in the museum of all the pictures of her, and even meeting the president of Finland. I think she received what was equivalent to what we would call a knighthood in England, for her work. But you know, and then you just have the tomb, and you know, with it was a very strange feeling. And I was very overwhelmed. And where you went to a UFO conference, that's where you went, was it? Yeah, and I went there. I wasn't invited and I couldn't afford to go, so I missed out on Tour of Jackson. But there may be one day, you know? But it's just strange that I was drawn to the country, and I have to be organized as this. They went out of their way, because I asked them, and they went out of their way to make sure that I went there. But just quickly, where she's buried, Ho Jansen, these cemeteries are huge, and the stones are huge. All of the different monuments that they've been created are absolutely spectacular. And we thought we could never find her, because it was like walking through Manhattan. They had lights and the streets and like the areas within this graveyard. But we found it, and we felt guided, and we found it because no one knew where it was. But we discovered it through. It was amazing. Yeah, it was telling us, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here.
Because I was going to ask you about Finland, but that's great you brought it up. So because I remember telling you when you went, I said, oh, I've been to Finland, and it turned out that you were going to the same city that I had been to in '93, Tampere. I'm not sure how to pronounce it still. And I told you about the huge tall tower which had a restaurant at the top. And so when you went there, it kind of brought back all the memories of myself going. And so that had a knock-on effect when I was reading about your exploits of going to Finland, because then it re-inspired me for my story, our children's story that I've started to write, which, just to explain to people, I used to tell my kids when they were younger, I used to make them up bedtime stories. And one that was always they'd always ask for was a story of two mice that I'd made up, these characters called Cyril and his dad, who couldn't see a thing because he had these great big bifocals on. And Cyril would be driving the car and his dad would be pointing the way, rather like my dad, but used to point the way when I used to drive him back from the hospital after having his eyes injected, I might add, so he couldn't see a thing himself, you know. And but my kids used to love it because I used to have them driving around and driving down the cat's mouth and things like that, getting lost. And when I told them this time around, I said, look, I'm going to do this story now and I'm going to illustrate it. My son is 24, my daughter's 29. They both smiled, and I could tell from that smile that they thought it was a good idea, because it wasn't, oh, don't be stupid, Dad. They had an affection for it. You could see it in their eyes, you know, which was lovely. So because of you going to Tampere again, Philip, I decided to set this story where they go on an adventure, and they do go to Finland, they do go to Tampere, and they do go up the tower. So that'll all be revealed in the story. So that's your kind of influence coming in there, which is great. Thank you.
I think when we write books, you're saying about, you know, there are kind of purposeful traits in the writing, because as you're saying, the Cyril's dad is based on your father. Horrifically, the Rockbotham twins are based on me and him when we're 60. So there are traits there. And I said to Philip, when it was published, my goodness, have we written our autobiography? Because all doesn't go well at the end. The tables are turned, basically. So it's interesting, isn't it? When you produce these books, you have elements of yourself in them. You can always find elements of yourself within them, within these stories. Just as you reiterated about my story.
Yes. Yeah. It is your personal experience that comes into these things, and you hear personal things, you're thinking, I can use that in that story. You know, I think all the great writers have done it. They've taken elements of life and injected it into the humor of Only Fools and Horses, for instance. I think it was, I forget the guy who wrote it now. He's passed on himself, but he used to listen to conversations, and if he heard anything funny, he'd say, I can use that in my Only Fools and Horses. And that's how these things built up, you see. But, yeah, so are you planning to do anything else going abroad for conferences next year, both of you? Anything happening on that front?
Well, we did go up north to meet up with Paul Sinclair, and we did some research and some interesting research at Danes Dyke, and we caught an image of some unicorn. That wasn't in the camera to begin with, of a figure that Paul's has put it online on his Truth Proof link, and some people are saying it's a man in a parka jacket. It's not, because there was no one there. The figure is huge, and from the distance, because and there's a light over its head, and it's interesting, isn't it, how. And this is the area of where the dogman, or what we would call the werewolf, has been seen by witnesses within this area. It's a very ancient Neolithic place, and very strange area. So they've been analysing this picture. It could be a Sasquatch, it could be a dogman, it could be a Neolithic person, we don't know. But whatever it is, it's huge. And people, of course, they'll come forward. The armchair people who haven't been there, who weren't there when you were primarily doing the research. And we've had some people's eyes that, that it's got a pair of white gloves in its pockets. They're not gloves, they're actually the foliage that's in front of it. So it's quite interesting. So we're hopefully going back up there next year to do some more research. Quite interesting, but it's quite unnerving, when you capture something on camera that wasn't there. There was no one there to begin with, and finding it that it's about 8 foot tall, huge. And the other thing is that with regards to the area of being very spooky, and we weren't there specifically to capture anything strange. We were just taking pictures of the area. And it's interesting, isn't it, when people say, well, it is something to do with the camera. Well, it's funny how the camera changes, but all the other images that you took are perfect.
Yes.
In light of that, no, I've got nothing planned for next year. There's no conferences. I think with me, I've moved, as I said, inward, branched inward into more science fiction, but I will continue, of course, with the paranormal. I just feel personally myself that the route I've taken, I can't reach any further at the moment. And this happened, which was interesting, because I had a book published by Cap or Ban in 2010 called Twin Souls, which was based on the paranormal. But by heavens, the next one didn't come out until over a decade later. So these things take time to think. I mean, I bought another one out, apart from Digital Demon Illusions. Like yourself, I haven't read it. I won't read it. Once it's finished, it's done. The science fiction one, Witness, is amazing. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because we're the same. I'd never looked at any of my books. I've had to flick through it quickly. Yeah. Pictures, but that's it. That's as far as it goes. But I've got nothing planned for next year. And I think I like to keep a clean slate, because I want to concentrate on the images for the sci-fi novella and, of course, the comic book of the Rock Bottom Twins.
Great. Well, I look forward to that. So briefly, Philip, I did mention this in the email, but it's something you don't know about, but I'm sure that you'll perhaps find out more about it as time goes on. Was this, I was listening to Preston Dennett's podcast, which he produces every Friday, and it's usually paranormal and the UFOs, and he covers lots of UFO cases and humanoids, very interesting sort of stuff, and we've actually had him on the Paranormal Peep show himself. And he mentioned a case on this particular episode that took place in Bedfordshire in 1965. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And it was RAF Chicksands. Now, I'd never heard of RAF Chicksands, but I did a quick check on the maps and things. And I popped where you were and put RAF Chicksands, and it put you about 20 minutes drive from them. So it's about maybe 10, 12 miles from you. So this was a story, as I understand it, although it was called RAF Chicksands, it was run by the US military. They were based there, and it was like a listening station. The witness understood it to be where they monitored satellites. From what I've read, it wasn't the case, but maybe they did that as well. But from what I've gleaned about the place, they basically listen to all incoming communications from around the world, whether that's radio or broadcasting or computers or anything. It's a bit like GCHQ of today, I'd imagine, with their kind of technology, but it was advanced technology at the time anyway. And what it was is because there was a lot of American military personnel based there, they obviously had their dependents, their families and children, and they lived on houses around the base, rather like, Lake and Heath or wherever it might be, and Bentwaters and that kind of thing. So what happened was that this young girl, she was about 14 at the time, she was playing badminton in her garden on the base when suddenly she was talking to her friend and they were shouting and whatever to each other. They couldn't hear each other. It all went quiet, even though their mouths were moving. And so they kind of thought, what's going on? And they looked up and they saw a flying saucer literally above their heads at treetop level. They said it was dark underneath. I will play the audio interview and I'll put it in this as well so we can all hear it. But I'm just recapping it for your benefit. And because their dad was like the base commander, she went into her house and that's when they could hear each other. For some reason, this effect, whatever it was, broke off once she went into the house. She told her dad, who came out, and he couldn't hear anything once he was outside, but he saw this UFO above the thing. So he went back into the house and he rang up the base and says, put it on lockdown, put it on full alert. We've got an incident. And as he watched it, he said this UFO started to drift away very, very slowly away from them. And the effect that was coming down and where they couldn't hear each other slowly wore off, I understood. And but nobody was allowed in the base or off the base for at least 24 hours. And her dad, he drove to the base. They all went into there's supposedly underground compartments there, but they all went underground and they were doing whatever they have to do in this kind of emergency, if you like. And when her dad came home the next day from the base, she said, well, what was it? And he said, I can't tell you anything. All I can say is wasn't one of ours. And she says, well, when you say one of ours, or you meaning one of ours, not of this earth? And he wouldn't say any more than that. And then many, many years later, like maybe 10 years later or something, or maybe, I'd imagine 10 years later, he ventured a bit more information about it. I suppose he wasn't working at the base at that time anymore. And he said it wasn't one of ours, which he had obviously said before, but he said simultaneously at 6 or 7 other bases of the same type of base, listening stations around the world, also had visits from UFOs on the very same day, which was remarkable. They all turned up at these listening stations on the very same day. Now, whether it was the same UFO went to each listening station or there were 7 individual UFOs, we don't know. But it was just something that came to light later on when they looked into it.
Recent incident, but it occurred some years ago in England on a military base. Let's see, it was about 64 or 65, 1964 or 65, at RAF Chicksands in Bedfordshire, England. I was a military dependent, and the base is a satellite communications base. It was in the afternoon, in the daylight, and a friend of mine and I were playing badminton in the backyard on the base, and we were shouting and laughing and carrying on, and then we realized that we couldn't hear each other. There wasn't any sound at all, and we stopped and tried to talk to each other again and still couldn't hear each other, and looked around, and right above us at the top of the trees, they were very old oak trees, so they were maybe 40, 50 feet high, I guess, was a large dark object, and we couldn't really tell anything from it because we could only see the bottom, and we got scared. We were just 14, 15 years old, and she went inside the house to get her dad, and inside the house he could hear her, and he came out to look at it, and we couldn't hear him talking to us either, and he couldn't hear us when he was outside. So he went back inside and alerted the post, and when he went back inside, it started moving off above the treetops, and as soon as it wasn't right above us, we could hear again. And I heard the sirens. Post went on alert, And he came back out and watched it go off over the trees, and it was moving very slowly. And it moved over maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 houses away, and they were housing units, so it was still fairly close. Now, like I said, they were calling the alert, and he told me to go home. And I lived about 2 blocks away. So I ran home, and my father, who was senior NCO on the base, was just leaving. And all the people on alert went down in what we called the hole. All the satellite communication stuff was underground. And they went down in the hole, and the base was closed to all traffic, whether you lived there or not. They closed the whole base. And he didn't come back until in the morning. My father didn't. And when he came back, I asked him what it was. And he said, I can't tell you. He said, all I can say is that it wasn't ours. And I said, you mean ours, or you mean the Earth's ours? And he wouldn't say anything else. Later, some years later, when we were talking about it in the family, I asked him again, and he said, it wasn't ours. And I said, well, I know that. And he said, well, there are 7 bases like the one we were on in the world. 7 American bases like that. And he said there were sightings at all 7 that same day.
Oh boy, that's strange.
Yeah. Those bases are very small, extremely small. There's maybe, at the top, there's maybe 50 families there, plus, a number of non-family people, unaccompanied people. Everything that's military is underground except the satellite antenna. And we called it the elephant cage. It's a great big circular structure, and it looks like a big round circus cage.
Yes.
And around the outside are these big white things that kind of look like missiles, but they're not missiles. It was a closed post at all times, except, if you had some reason to go on, then the APs, the air police, would let you on and off. But you had to have some business there. It wasn't just open to the public.
Okay. What shape did that object have?
It was round. It was round from the bottom anyway, and it was dark.
Okay.
I'd say, dark black, but it was not shiny. It was just a dusky, dark color.
Was there any estimate of size?
It didn't seem very large. I'm not very good at size and distances, but I'd say it was maybe 60 to 80 feet across.
Okay.
Stop that, please. I should add, the reason I never mentioned this before was we were told not to talk about it. And my father, in that line of work, was in a very sensitive position, and it was not uncommon for us to be told that things that happened on base were not for public consumption.
Yes.
But it's always bothered me, and I know it's verifiable because other people saw it, and the base went on alert.
Okay.
And Dad said it was tracked on their equipment.
Yes.
So
how close would that?
There.
How close would that have been to you?
Like I said, it was right at the top of an old maple tree, or an old oak tree, rather.
But not quite overhead.
It was overhead at first, and then it started moving off slowly, and then it. As I was running home, I looked back because I was really scared.
Okay.
And it was moving off very quickly then. It just went zip. But it was, before that, it was not moving like an airplane or a helicopter or anything like that, and there was no noise from it.
Okay.
But it would move like to the right, 100 yards, and then over a little bit, always on a level movement. Well, I'm glad I finally told somebody.
Okay.
Feels better.
Well, if you remember any information that you haven't passed on to us, we'd like to hear from you.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, wow, that's quite fascinating, isn't it? Yeah, I think also that it's quite, when a UFO comes into an airspace, we know from experience from the 9th of April 2016 at 11:15 p.m. at night, when we were presented with those huge, massive, circular UFOs that descended, on that cold night, on a Saturday night. When we spoke, it was like it would just snow, muffled, because there was no one around. But for not being able to hear one another, that's very least speaks me. That the R101 and the R100 are linked within bases not far Cardington.
Yes.
We know that John G. Fuller, the author of The Interrupted Journey, which deals with the Betty Barney Hill case, also wrote a book called The Airman Who Would Not Die, which is based on the incredible testimony of witnesses through the destruction of the R101 that came down in France. And then, of course, mediums here in Bedford started bringing the crew through from the other side. And, of course, the American author, whom I wrote to get some, some reply back, but didn't know he was dead for 10 years. This is before the internet, but so there is, I think every area has its own type of spookiness, like Chicksands and I was going to add that Chicksands, I don't know whether it was open in 1993 and 1994. I have no idea. I know of it because an American lady who worked where we worked at the time, she was, her husband was stationed at Chicksands. I didn't ask much about it, but her name was Amy, and her husband just up in her late 20s. Her husband worked in Chicksands. So she was American, but she wouldn't say any more about it. Nothing to do with UFO. I didn't ask her at the time. I wasn't interested in it. And he worked there. If it was open, I didn't even know it was open.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, in 1997, the Americans moved off the base and it was briefly taken over by the RAF for about 6 months to 11, 12 months. And then it was taken over by the Army, and they now use it. It's an MOD-owned kind of station, and it's still there. It's still open, but in a different capacity. They do a lot of teaching there of technical security and that kind of things. They teach members of the forces. They also teach members of the civil service, like the police, about listening or spying or whatever they have to teach there. And so they've changed the nature of the job slightly. They're using it more of a teaching aid rather than a listening post. They teach you how to listen, I guess. That's what they use the equipment for. And they've got this huge, they called it the elephant cage, and it's a circular ring on the ground. You've perhaps seen it, I don't know, but it's made of wires and things like that. And it looks like a cage, basically. But this is presumably the kind of listening aerial or radar-based ground system that they would use to monitor their things. And this is obviously what the UFOs seem to be interested in.
The big ear, yeah. I'll tell you something funny about an American military base, and I couldn't tell you which one it was because many long years ago, before the sat-navs and the maps were available, I had my old car and I finished doing a function, a clairvoyant function, and I was driving back at dark at night, and I literally got lost. And I found myself driving up to this huge base. And when I got up there were these guards up there. I think they were armed on base. They're allowed to be. And I drove up and thought, oh my goodness, I hope I don't get shot. So I pulled over and I said, I'm awfully sorry, I am lost. Can you help me? And two of they were Americans, and they said, you're from England and you're lost? As you know, they were wonderful. They gave me clear instructions of how to get onto the motorway and which way to take. And it made me laugh, and I felt very impressed. And one of them said, you're very British. And I will always remember. But whatever base it was, and people say, well, I can't even remember, but I know it wasn't near here. But it was occupied by Americans because they spoke American. But let me tell you, they were incredible. And I was in England, lost, but they're from America. And they knew exactly where I needed to go in my own country.
That's funny, isn't it? It's incredible. Yeah. But they would point the way for you in your own country. Yeah.
That would make sense with Chicksands because Amy, where we worked, she was there for a few years and they went back to America. So I didn't know it was to do with reposting or whether it was closing down that section. I don't know. But yes, he was working there from 93, certainly onwards for a few years. But certainly we went around in 65 anyway. So yes.
Well, when you get... Sorry, Ronnie?
Saucer is astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It does seem to Bedford area does seem to be haunted by flying saucers. They still have an interest, don't they? I mean, you got Luton Airport down the road, half an hour away. You got Chicksands up the road. And then of course you've seen you've got your Cardington Hall hangars and things. There's a lot of interesting things for them to look at, I think. Right, I think we better draw this interview to a close. So thank you once again, gentlemen, for your time. And may we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from the Paranormal Peep Show, Andy, myself, and also Ben. And have you got any plans for Christmas? Is it family gathered around the fire type of thing?
Well, I think it more in line of that scene on Independence Day when they're all on the top of that building having a party, wearing their UFO hats and asking them to come down. You know, here we are. No, it will be a family matter, so it will be a quiet one for us. So that'll be lovely. We're looking forward to that, and I hope you two do. I hope you also have a we'll have a nice.
Yeah, well, my daughter's coming down from the Orkney Islands to join us, so that'd be nice. So yeah, that'd be a Christmas to remember, I hope. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Neil. Thank you.
Hi folks, welcome back to the Paranormal Peep Show with myself, Andy Chaplin, Neil Ward, Ben Emlyn-Jones, and Gary, whose last name Robinson. There we go. Yeah, so that was a fascinating talk and interview with the Kinsella twins. Right, Neil, what have we got next? What's up?
Well, Gary has mentioned that he's had an interest. I mean, we heard some of the interesting kind of experience there with Philip and Ronnie, and Gary has mentioned to me that he's also had an interesting story that he'd like to relate. And we do like ghostly tales and things around the fire at Christmas time. So, Gary, do you want to enlighten us to what's been happening with you?
Yeah, it's not a very Christmassy story, but it's a good one, I think. So I reckon it started roughly about 6 months ago. And what was happening was I kept having these dreams. I would say on a good week, I would have one dream, and on a bad week, 3 dreams. Always the same thing. I would wake up in a very dark, cold room, like something out of some horrible movie. And I wouldn't know where I was. And I'd be aware of a presence moving towards the room, coming to get me. And these dreams would have such a deep sort of sense of terror that they would install in me. So it's like a deep-rooted feeling. It was very personal. And so I'd wake up feeling very emotional, and I would be calling out in my sleep. And this went on and on and on, the same thing. And then it kind of expanded. And I started getting these experiences where I was waking up early in the morning. Is it the hypnagogic or hypnopompic state where you're slowly coming into consciousness? One of those states.
Hypnagogic when you're hypnopompics when you're going off to sleep, I think was the other way around. I can't remember.
So a number of times I heard voices, like a whispering voice. And this is where it started to get really freaky. On one occasion, the voice clearly said, "Let me in." And that really freaked me out. I spent a few days thinking about that. And another time it said, "Listen to me." This went on and on. There were a few times where I couldn't make out what it was saying. And around the same time, during these months, I found myself withdrawing from everyone. Social wise, like I stopped going to music events, because being in the drum and bass scene, I'm always out a lot. I kind of stepped back from that. I haven't even been checking Ben's channel recently. I haven't been engaging. I couldn't explain it. I had a lot of frustrations, a lot of anger. Didn't know where it was coming from. There was nothing particularly going wrong in life, but these dreams pursued, and it became exhausting, getting up some mornings thinking, oh, it's the same thing again. You get the emotional kind of draining as you wake up from it. Some mornings, I wake up at 5 a.m., couldn't get back to sleep. And then I had another dream where it was like a sketch from the show Stranger Things, like a kid's house. And standing over it was this kind of horrible shadow thing with its hands over the house. And I thought, wow, this is bad. So around the same time, I was listening to Mark Bayersky. I don't know if you guys know who Mark Bayersky is.
Not heard the name.
He's an energy healer, a guy from Yorkshire, lives in Spain. And he talks a lot about non-physical attachments, demonic attachments. And he says that although people shouldn't use these as an excuse for problems in our life, in other words, you can't go around saying, oh, I did this and I'm a bad person because I must have an attachment. He says there are lots of cases of this and people don't understand it and it goes undiagnosed. And he started saying, firstly, you'll notice that you'll you'll notice you've got a lot of anger. And I thought, well, hold on a minute. This is what I'm going through. So I went to a friend of mine who is a psychic, and she's been doing that since she was a child. She's into every aspect of the psychic world. And she often tells me stories about how she goes to a place that she claims is the realm that ayahuasca users go to, and meets different entities and whatnot. She tells me some pretty dark stories, and she works with a lot of famous bands and does like psychic work with them. Anyway, she sent me a message after I explained this to her, and she said, so I had a look into this for you. And she said, you had something. She said, and it wasn't very nice. She says, I'm not going to tell you what it was. She said, I don't want to frighten you, but it's gone. She said, when you go to sleep tonight, you shouldn't have any more trouble. And she said to me, if it comes back, because they sometimes do come back, let me know. She says, I'll get rid of it again. She says, it's best if I don't tell you what it is. And here's the weird thing. I went to sleep that first night after her telling me that, and I felt in my sleep like I was in a different place. I was in a safe place. I was being told that I was somewhere safe. And I had that for days afterwards until I felt like at peace. But
So has it gone permanently, or and it's like nothing since?
Nothing's come back. Nothing at all. I tried sleeping with a crucifix as well.
So with that, I've got to ask, usually there's a reason or there's an opening that bring these things in. Can you pinpoint what that might have been?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, because without wanting to talk about Mark Bayersky too much, he puts down drinking, as in Ouija boards and ayahuasca as causes of people getting attachments that can affect them in these ways. And obviously my wife is doing a lot of ayahuasca, but that's shamanic, so she should have been protected. I can't remember if I told you guys on one of these shows that there was an incident at one of her sessions where a young Mexican athlete in his 20s did ayahuasca followed by a psychedelic from a frog in the same session.
Right.
He never woke up in the morning. Around the same time that they were in that ceremony, I'm here in England. I had one of these dreams where I saw, and this is going to sound bizarre, this window behind me, I saw a figure of a young guy climb through the window, walk across the room, stop, turn around and look at me. Out through the door. So was there some kind of connection between me and her, because she was an ayahuasca opened firewall or something like that, and that led to something darker? I don't know.
Oh, I see what you mean. So you're thinking possibly the connection with this guy, and I assume that he passed over to spirit, and that was his.
He never came back. Yeah.
So you say that could have opened a portal or a doorway, and then something else came through that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's the case, because that was probably about the time where it all started for me. And that dream where I saw that figure, it came with the same feeling as these other dreams. If I was to make a dramatic / pop culture comparison, think about Stranger Things when the Demogorgon is coming for the kids. That's kind of what it felt like, but also on a personal level, like something was after me. Very strange. Yeah.
The thing is, we are at war, because I've experienced actually similar things to this, not exactly the same, but similar things. And we're at war. There's in the spiritual realms, there are good, wonderful, loving beings that love us and want to help us, and there are, we're not allowed to swear, but not so nice ones who have a very, very dark, destructive agenda for humanity, and sort of a sliding scale of everything in between. And so far as I'm concerned, we're at war, and there's a force that wants to help us, and there's a force that wants to utterly destroy us out there.
Yeah. So it goes back to the bad things in the world today being done to feed the potential entities that that need that negativity to feed off. Is that the potential explanation for the madness?
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense. I mean, I keep going back to Labour and Keir Starmer. He looks so kind of harmless and so kind of like, oh, he's here to help everybody. The amount of harm that man is doing to this country, destroying this country. And don't forget, these people, they go to, he was asked, Keir Starmer was asked, where do your loyalties lie, Parliament or Davos? Instantly, he said Davos, without a bat of an eyelid, Davos. So these people go to secret societies. They go to places like Bohemian Grove, worshipping a giant 60-foot owl in front called Moloch, doing mock baby sacrifices. Now, I'm not saying that the baby was real, and I'm not saying that Keir Starmer actually does them, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to similar things like this. So, and we've got a satanic Hollywood arena. We've got a satanic. You probably know this in the music industry. There's a satanic element, and that's not saying everyone in the music industry is a Satanist, but a lot have. Let's just say the companies or the funders or the people behind it have dark things going on. And actually, to back this up, have you heard, Gary, of the one of the guys from Boyzone, of all things, Boyzone, who basically said that the music industry is satanic and that satanic rituals are being done on every album and every piece of music that's created. Like,
Wow, I haven't heard that from Boyzone, but I have heard that before, and I've heard it from Mark Devlin as well, and it doesn't surprise me. And there was a brief period about 10 years ago where I was involved with Interscope, Eminem's label.
Yeah.
And they wanted a track that I put out on my label. They wanted to add it to their cachet that they offer up to their pop stars. And at the same time, they were trying to sign a young guy that worked for me, a vocalist. And his boy band, they were getting pressured, and they were seeing some things that they didn't like, and their dad just didn't let them go through with it. And they eventually escaped Los Angeles and came back home. So yeah, I do know there's a lot of weird things going on. But
sorry, Eric, I've just found it. I'm going to drop it into chat. Just found it on YouTube. I'm pretty quick with finding these things. Yes, what's his name? I think it's Shane Lynch. There we go. Boyzone, Shane Lynch. If anyone's wanting to find out what's really going on behind the scenes, there's others that have come out as well. There's other music industry people who basically said that they sold their soul to the devil. And, you know, a lot of people think, oh, you know, ha ha, isn't it funny? But they mean it in a literal sense. I think Lady Gaga, I think Beyonce, I think there's a few others. There's a whole load of clips of these stars all saying the same thing, that they've sold their soul. And I think I'm right in saying, and you might be able to back me up on this, Neil and Ben, I think it's Beyonce who says that when she's on stage, it's not really her performing. It's like she gets possessed, or she allows something in to allow her to perform. Have you guys?
Fits with it, love, yeah. Well, I'm glad Gary mentioned Mark Devlin, because he's no one more than him has done anything like this, because he is a club DJ, and he knows.
What's he said? Because I've not come.
Well, it basically says that everyone. He mentioned Boyzone, and he mentioned several artists, Beyonce. Everyone who's achieved anything within this industry has been through this filter, which involves horrible things they've had to do, including sexual abuse. And it's amazing now that this Boyzone guy. I mean, Boyzone were the biggest thing on earth. They were this Dublin-based boy band, I remember, and you know, and they were they would like top of the charts and everything. I remember they had a couple of good songs actually. And someone in his position's got nothing to gain by coming out and talking about this sort of thing. He'll just be David Icke and cancelled before you know it. But and then you see the same thing in Hollywood, of course. And the idea of selling your soul, the idea of you making a decision to exchange something in a satanic deal, that is classic dark occultism, and it can be found throughout history. It goes right back to things like Adam and Eve and Jesus being tempted and things like this. And there's no reason why it shouldn't exist in the real world. And indeed, I've heard the phrase, I don't know who coined it, the best trick the devil ever pulled was convincing us he doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And this could explain why, atheists more than anyone can be susceptible to this kind of thing, because they don't believe they're doing anything. They don't believe there's anything there to be frightened of. And when it comes to possession, I'm glad, Gary, you're on the mend now, definitely. And of course, I did notice your absence from my channel and community, which we do.
Everything, Ben. For some reason, I couldn't face YouTube anymore. I was going out. I've been completely off the map.
I did wonder. I'm glad, because we did speak privately, and I think you sent me a Facebook message, and it's good to see you again. I'm glad you're on the mend. That's my primary feeling about this. But of course, I would be, obviously, I don't expect you to do this because you've been in this position. You've actually had to deal with it yourself. But I'm curious about what this lady didn't tell you, and she said you was best you don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious, but at the same time, I don't want to know because it's someone that I really trust.
Does that make you more frightened when she says you don't want to know? You're thinking, oh my God.
Yeah, I got to be honest, I couldn't sleep. Well, no, obviously I could sleep, but I found it very unsettling hitting the set for weeks. Oh, geez, I'm being watched. Is it lurking? But at the same time, I felt like it had been flushed. I felt disconnected from whatever it was that was always lurking.
That's the main thing.
Gary, have you ever done a Ouija board or done anything that might have opened, or was it purely this soul that you saw that might have opened up a portal? If you think of anything else that it might have been,
that's my only thing really, because I never even did the ayahuasca. I only did the microdosing, so I never opened myself up. But my wife, she did ayahuasca like multiple times per night. She did all these really powerful psychedelics to the point where the night that the young guy died, she said that she was out there in the galaxy and she thought, I can't get home. She said, I don't know how to get back. And if I don't get back, who's going to look after the kids?
You see, it's the thing is, Gary, like, because you're in an intimate relationship with somebody who is involved in this, that could have had affected it. It doesn't mean that she's in danger.
They could have bounced off kind of thing.
I mean,
forget, Ben, I was going to say, because we just touched on movies, because you're a fan of Dune, have you been watching Dune Prophecy? Because there's an interesting storyline where they outlawed artificial intelligence and they have people selling artificial intelligence robots and animals and stuff.
Right, that sounds interesting, because I mean, I boycotted all the pointless sequels and remakes and spin-off because they tend to be very, very insulting and don't do credit to the original franchise. I mean, I didn't like. I know you disagree. I think we disagreed on this, but I didn't like the new Dennis Villeneuve Dune. I love the David Lynch one, but this one I didn't really get anything out of.
Well, the show linked to the movies is meant to be the same universe, but I thought it was interesting that they've just introduced this subplot where AI is illegal and all the planets within the Dune system are hunting down people that are selling these illegal AI creatures and robots and stuff.
That is fascinating, because I'm aware of like the backstory of the Dune universe, the Butlerian Jihad, where humans have to go to war against these intelligent machines, which is why the Dune franchise, the Dune movies have been made, and indeed the original Dune book has such a steampunk feel to it, because there's no sophisticated electronics in Dune. I mean, they have like basic things such as, instruments on spaceship panels. They have X-ray machines in hospitals, but that's about it. But yeah, I mean, that sounds very interesting, Gary. I might give that a go just because of that plot element is enough to encourage me. Yeah, definitely. Wilson?
In the creative world right now with Midjourney and creation and also music production, all these things have been affected by AI. There's a lot of people that are not happy with it. There's a lot of people that think it's actually satanic. And here it is, new Dune TV show.
Well, there's some people who've said a lot of things about how, in the same way that EVP happens, where spiritual entities will actually manifest on things such as tape, and there's ITC, transcommunication, instrumental communication. That obviously computers can also be used by these things. And there's this strange feature of now, there's never been confirmed, but there was that lobe that kept appearing, Loab, this horrible looking, ugly and frightening looking woman who kept appearing in AI art. And the person who first created it doesn't know where the hell it came from.
Explain this. So it's an app that creates AI art.
Yeah, there's a Swedish person was she was creating. She's no one knows who her real name, but she's got like but she was creating art, and suddenly this strange, horrible creature appeared, and it's like a feminine, demonic-looking being. If you just put LOAB into Google Images, and you'll see it. Now, obviously, it's too late now because it's now out there. AI art is now, all the AI art apps are now picking them up, so it's kind of like it's like the This Man thing. You know, people are dreaming about it because they've seen it in the media or on TV and on computers. But it's just an example of what we're talking about here.
Pretty rented.
Do you know? I mean, Jerry Marcinski. I've been watching Jerry Marcinski, who's a former psychiatrist, who said when he was trained, he was told he has to deal with schizophrenics and people like that, and he was told never humor them in their delusions. Don't get into discussions about anything they talk about because it's all part of the pathology. It's in their head. Never even talk to the patient about it. But anyway, he broke that rule, and he made some astonishing discoveries about what the mental patients actually were enduring, and he even had some confirmation in terms of his own experiences that there were malevolent entities that were actually affecting them. Very interesting chap, Jerry Marcinski. Yeah, very interesting chap.
I've actually.
It's similar to your story, Gary. You know, and even the late great Gareth Davis was concerned about this. It was just before he died, but he had some horrible experiences. For example, even in his own home, he was just out in the garage where they got a washing machine, and he describes this horrible experience he had.
What happened there then?
He felt a moment of horror and revulsion, and he felt he was under spiritual attack at that moment. He talks about it in the Mindset podcast, with some of the programs we did. And then when he was actually visiting his family in Wales, where he comes from originally, and he was like picking up sounds on. He left a tape recorder running by his bed and was picking up sounds. And when he was back, he split up with his wife, and he moved into his own home, and there was like a black handprint on the new paint, because before he moved in, they had the whole place redecorated and painted. There was like a black handprint on there. And I said, Gareth, have you washed it off yet? And he says, no. Are you scared it might come back if you wash it off? And he was picking up more weird noises in the flat. And this was just like, and then sadly he passed away.
I think with all of this, we need to kind of ask, is life following art, or is art following life? And what I mean by that is I've actually found the clip where there's lots of different celebrities saying that they sold their soul to the devil. It's on YouTube. It's called I Sold My Soul to the Devil. Katy Perry, Kanye West, Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Bob Dylan. And people could also, if they want to search for the Shane Lynch one, look up Shane Lynch, the music industry is satanic. What I'm trying to say is this, if the music industry and if Hollywood is pushing dark, satanic, basically low entity stuff towards the public, is that making the public then more susceptible to bringing it in and then changing their mindset? Or is it the case that we have this dark mindset as a public consciousness, and we're the ones that are creating these movies and the music to do this? Which is which, chicken or the egg?
And I tell you what, I've been told that we should avoid and general nastiness, because apparently, say for example, you want to sit down and watch Goodfellas. Well, it's a great movie, but it's violent. There's a lot of cruelty and a lot of abuse. And what I'm told is that exposing yourself to that kind of material on a regular basis also makes you open to these kind of things. And I've always been really into like gangster shows and Peaky Blinders, love, hate, things like that. But the trouble is that they are just full of domestic abuse and murder and beatings. And so I kind of swerve them these days, because I can feel that negative pull, which
I think you're right.
Mark Devlin says something similar about this, because he says like he talks specifically about his own particular field, which is like club DJing and things like this, and he gives examples of various instances in which he compares like music performances and concerts to religious festivals, and that's because he says that the people who are listening, they're all dancing and they're cheering, and they're possessed emotionally and therefore spiritually by the music, by the performance. DJ, and that's he compares the DJ like to the priest. Some of them even look like it. They're standing there like playing the music, and they're surrounded by lights. Sometimes and they wear strange garments, and they're surrounded by lights, and there's fireworks, there's pyrotechnics, there's smoke, there's sometimes even smells that are used, and he says that's all adding to the feeling, to the enormous feeling and emotion that is built up within the audience, and that in itself, that motion itself, gives off this spiritual energy. And I mean, you mentioned TV shows and movies, Gary. Maybe that's something similar.
But you know what? Speaking of DJs, let's say you're like me and you're an indie artist that has a pretty good following, a few DJs support my tracks, so I get a bit of press, but I'm not a DJ. If you take a person similar to me who is a DJ, people like Spotify, when they will take their music and put it straight into the mainstream Spotify editorial playlists so that they get an even bigger following. So it's like, if I play the game, if I want to become a DJ and I want to be the religious figure and stand in front of people taking credit for other people's music, then Spotify will reward me in the system for being one of those figures, and they will put me in their editorials, and I will, quadruple my numbers and my stats and my fans like overnight. But
that's a typical satanic deal. That's a typical devil's bargain, isn't it? It's
numbers you want.
What about very powerful, emotionally powerful movie scenes? For example, the opening scene in the film Rocky, the original one, where Sylvester Stallone's character is involved in a boxing match, and he's like being beaten senseless by this other boxer, and it's very upsetting. The makeup is really good because he's got black eyes, his nose is bleeding, and then at the end he fights back, and then he calls out for his wife, and he's crying, and everyone else is crying. And if you're watching that again, and what's he standing? The funny enough, the floor of the boxing ring is an EU flag. It's with the 12 slats. I mean, look at it. If you don't believe me, look at the scene. What's that?
In Rocky is different though. The intention is not bad. Also, Rocky is not a film about a man who wins by violence. He's in violence just to survive, and you've got to remember Rocky.
Yeah, he's a likable character. Yeah, he's a sort of disingenuous kind of loving family man who loves his wife.
Yeah, I
see that. Yeah,
example of violence doesn't have bad intention.
Yeah, I mean, I actually wrote an article called "Some of Them Are on Our Side," where I actually make the point that not everything in the media is controlled for a malevolent intent. There's even people putting out positive intentions in some of their productions and some of their works, their music, their films, their books, because they can do so, they can get away with it because what they're doing is essentially allegorical. This is why it's similar to my own fiction, which is allegorical.
Right, I think we better leave it there for the minute, gents. We'll take a pause of allegorical pauses at sort. We'll take a listen to an interview that we had, Andy and I, we recorded a few weeks back with Kristian Lander, who, Ben, from the ASAP conferences. We met Kristian at the ASAP conference at the end of August in 2024, and he kindly spoke to Andy and I about the night crawlers and also the Nottinghamshire Roswell case, which I think you've been to, Ben, and we used a clip of that in there. And so maybe afterwards you can tell us about your experience of the Nottinghamshire Roswell. So here we are with ourselves. I've got to point out, for those that are watching on YouTube, I switched my camera on my webcam to defocus the background, and it all looked good in the recording, but when I actually watched the recording afterwards, it seemed to defocus my face as well. I can't understand how that happened, but obviously Skype didn't like me on that particular occasion, so apologies for that, but it's one of those things I'm stuck with, and AI wouldn't be able to fix it. So there we go. So anyway, take a look at us chatting to Kristian Lander, and we'll see you in a minute. Right, so here we are now. It's Andy and I, and we are interviewing Kristian Lander, and we met Kristian Lander at the ASAP conference back in August. That's a Seriously Strange conference in Winchester, and Kristian did a presentation on the Nightcrawler. That was his own research on the Nightcrawler, which is a series of strange events and videos turning up on the internet of these weird beings, which we'll discuss in a minute. But first, welcome, Kristian, to the Paranormal Peep Show. Now, Kristian, you've obviously got a lot of research under your belt and do a lot of work for the association, and I can't say it. What's it called, ASAP?
Yeah, ASAP. So it's the Association of the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena.
It's a bit of a mouthful, I must say. That's why I get the people that are in it to say it, because I always trip over the words. We got Matt Arnold to say it last time for us, who was also a member of the organisation. So how did you get into this field of research with ASAP and everything like that?
Well, in terms of how I went to ASAP, so I joined ASAP in 2011. So I'm kind of a long-term member now, 13 years, I guess. But the reason I met ASAP, or reason I sought them out, and again, it was only through searching, and I saw some of their content they were putting out at the time. I was I would use the word critical. I was kind of dubious about the methods that were being used in paranormal investigations. And the ethics side really touched me in regards to, I can remember going to a paranormal investigation at a house. The two people I was there, they were doing an investigation, and kind of asked me to go along. And I was very much aware that I was upstairs. I was in one of the bedrooms where some of the phenomena was happening. I had kind of a recorder going, shall we say. But what I can actually hear downstairs was the kind of lead investigator and another person sort of having a bit of a bicker and argument with the person whose house it was. And it dawned on me very quickly that this person is going to say something potentially to the public, potentially to friends and family, that we were not going to give them the answers that they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear validation. There was a ghost in there was a demon in there. Who knows what they wanted? But my two friends were saying, hey, have you checked your medication? Are you aware of things like pareidolia? Very grounded perspective. She clearly had already been to a medium. She clearly already had her mind made up of what was in this house. And here's me upstairs. And I realized, here I am sat on their daughter's bed. Her daughter's 7 years old. And I could just see this room. And I was like, what is the potential? That person who's not happy with an investigator in a house. We have no accreditation, and we are asking to go into people's houses. What is the danger of that? And it really dawned on me at that point, where people who claim to be investigators are doing this on a weekly basis. They're asking to go into people's houses, but there are also people asking people to come to their house. That I think there's an inherent danger within that people need to be verified, that need to be vetted, DBS checked. But also, we don't know the people who we're going to go and see. No one's vetted them. We're doing that as we go in. We have to try to trust their judgment. And that kind of ethical quandary really took me out of investigation. I kind of stepped back for a while. I did more research. I did a lot more writing, just topic-wise and interest-wise. I kept a broad network of family and friends within the paranormal community. But then I joined ASAP, because at that time, they were conducting an ethical questionnaire. However, I had actually already written one, and I'd actually sent it out to 349 different panel investigation groups across the UK and across the United States. And I had 3 replies, and only one of them had actually filled in the form. And it wasn't nothing difficult or anything. It was quite sensible questions I filled at the time. So I contacted myself and I says, hey, I can see you've got a conference coming up in Bath this time. Is it possible I can announce this questionnaire that I've got? Could you? And they were like, Dave Wood, who was the chairman at the time, says, hey, come along. So I got to meet Lionel Thamthorpe and various members who I guess became my peers. And I was very happy with that. So that's how I got into the more serious side of investigations.
Out of interest, have you what would be the worst incident of paranormal investigators going into a house and the people being crazy, or it all just going completely wrong, or what would be the worst situation you've come across?
I'm not aware that it's happened, but I can imagine a scenario where a person might be schizophrenic, person might have personal demons that they might be fighting, they might be dealing with alcoholism, they might be dealing with domestic violence or whatever, and you end up in the situation where they believe that there's a ghost there, that they believe something, and there's you who says, actually, it might not be, because they're hearing voices, for example. Now, I'm not aware of a particular case that's happened. I can't cite it for me to say so, but I can imagine that is the danger that someone will put themselves in, and that person isn't happy that you've said that, but they believe it. And then suddenly, you're in a potential threat situation. This person doesn't like you because they've already made an assertion about what you believe, and they suddenly either want validation, they want you to cast it out, they want you to exercise the place, they want you to do an investigation there. And you'd have to, unless you're spry of mind, unless you're perhaps quite witty and quite sensible, a kind of a calming approach that you give this person, that situation could go south really quickly. I think. I don't know of any case where that has happened, but there's certainly been stories where people would call a pizza guy around just to beat him up. Here's people saying, "Hey, I've got a ghost at my house," and there's a lot of eager investigators who want to go around and investigate anyone's house. There's a danger of what that could be, and I'm just very conscious of that.
Fred and Rose West could kind of like say, "Hey, do you want to come round?" And that could go.
They were very much into pizza, I think. I guess.
There's a film similar to that out at the moment called Heretic. I went to see it. It was all right actually, with Hugh Grant, and it was basically two people from the Mormons knock on the door saying, "Do you want a pamphlet on the Mormons?" And he brings them in and basically kind of like terrorizes them. But yeah, I mean, this could well be a situation that could happen with paranormal investigators.
That's handy tips for me in future, because I'm always talking to religious orders on the doorstep.
I think the diplomatic way of doing it, if I was a paranormal investigator and I felt there was a threat, diplomatic way would be saying, like, I'm sure that you feel that there's something there, it warrants further investigation. We have to go now, but I'm sure we can come back and investigate it. And then obviously you don't. That'll be covered by.
There is certainly a sensible way to approach it, and I guess unless you're aware of it in the mind, but I think a lot of people are so eager they'll just go along with it anyway, and then find themselves digging themselves into more danger. And I'm just conscious that people aren't aware of what they might be putting themselves in for.
It's interesting, talking about the ethics and all that kind of stuff. I mean, when I mentioned earlier about the late Peter Fenwick, who's just now passed away, he was into researching near-death experiences for the parapsychologists, and he was also into psychiatry and that. He's very well respected in his field. But I did some work with a scientist who worked under him doing ESP, and I had to fill this whole form in, like a questionnaire. Are you on any medication? All those sorts of things,
Yeah.
And once I ticked everything that he was happy with, then it proceeded to the next stage. But yeah, I felt very well protected. Not that I felt threatened at all or anything. I was kind of intrigued by the whole stuff, but because I was interested in this sort of thing anyway, I was an eager person to go along to it. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He was trying to weed out literally anyone that might be under some sort of medication, or have you heard voices, or any weird stuff like that. And obviously, I jumped through all those hoops, and it proceeded to the next stage. But it just shows how wrong it can go. Like you said, you heard the argument downstairs with the couple and everything.
Yeah, I've been there on both sides of that, actually. I've had an encounter much like you had there, where we turned up, and clearly we weren't the only investigators who turned up at that time, and whether everyone was taking a number or all happening at the same time, everyone in different rooms, that was just like, what is going on here?
It's like the equivalent of a Tupperware party, but a spookaware party or something, And
are you aware that people do sell them? Paranormal parties. No, and summer's parties, but for ghost hunters.
Would you like to buy the sheet, sir? So getting back to your own film, you was interested in Star Trek, wasn't it? That got you into the whole thing. Was that right? You mentioned that.
I was in Star Trek, yeah.
Oh, you was in Star Trek. What was you in Star Trek as?
I played a lieutenant in a animated series back in 2022. I basically played a character who eventually died as part of Federation 1.
You've been down, in other words, to the planet in a red top. Is that what it's saying?
It was a pilot.
Oh, okay. How did that happen then?
So actually, for I guess it depends on what you know of Star Trek. So there's what's known as Star Trek: The Wilderness Years, which is basically after Enterprise ended. There's a whole period of time, perhaps like 8 years, where there is no Star Trek. Basically, Paramount has exhausted all its storytelling capability. They've put it on the shelf for a while, and in that time, a lot of the actors, a lot of the filmmakers behind Star Trek, the producers and so on, actually were kind of tapping the audience a bit and poking them to do their own projects. And as such, what was born out of that was Star Trek New Voyages, Star Trek Continues, Hidden Frontier, which again ran for 7 years of its own seasons, fully voiced, fully acted and so on, but independent. But because of them, a lot of them had guest stars who were actually from the shows would come in, like George Takei would come in, original Uhura would come in, Tuvok, Chekhov and so on. So you had original Star Trek characters played by the original actors coming into fan films, basically, to make it canon. And as such, sort of, Paramount allows that to happen because they weren't doing anything. So Hidden Frontier was the kind of main one at that time. And that had a number of spin-offs itself that were really successful. And basically, it was the 10-year anniversary of that show ending that I auditioned for a part, and I got to star in a role against some quite interesting alumni. So I was very happy.
Wow. So you had to do a voiceover, and it was an animation, was it?
It was, yes. How it was pitched to me, it was going to be an animated webcomic. It kind of click through multiple choice, where people would obviously, you would hear like the original voice actors, as it were, or an animation sequence would happen, and you make a different choice. But no, actually, what they decided to do in 2022 was actually release the whole thing as a film, and so to do that was pretty cool.
So was it your own accent, or did you have to put on an accent or something?
No, so actually, there's a couple of points where I remember there were certain words that sound different in like American accent. So I actually recorded both when I sent in my tape, basically my audition, and they were so happy that I'd done that so they that you clearly were aware of the filmmaking process, and I'm quite happy with my recordings, and that was actually what got me the role.
Oh wow!
Did they go for English or American accent?
In this show, they actually went with the English one, so
that's interesting. The old Jean-Luc Picard approach. I never understood Jean-Luc Picard. He was French, but he spoke with a clear Shakespearean accent. It's really, really weird. Yeah. So moving on from Star Trek, we were talking about the Nightcrawler, which you were kind of done a lot of research, and you was just explaining off our recording basically how you got involved in that. Can you just recap slightly what the Nightcrawler is for our audience and how you got involved with the Nightcrawler research that you've done?
Okay, so how I got involved with it is, I think it was 2019. I was asked by ASAP via their media correspondent, hey, we've been a company from Los Angeles has been in touch with us, and they want to know if you would come basically on TV show, talk to them about this new Nightcrawler video that's come out, that's been recorded. And it appears to be a trucker at the side of the road, and there was they'd seen something at the side of the road, and there was a case where it appears to be as a boy in a street, and then this white pair of trousers runs out of a side street and kind of runs along a path. Actually, it's quite good, actually. And they wanted me to comment and give my opinions on it, and if I believed it was a ghost. So I was quite fascinated by this. But it was interesting that it actually come to me, because many, many years ago, I was a member, I guess I still am a member, of a website called Above Top Secret, which is kind of a, you could say it leans conspiratorial. It kind of leans into the kind of what we consider to be alternative topics. It was very popular before social media took off. And but it leans very skeptically. So basically, there's a kind of hive mind of people who quite quickly will go, no, this is BS. This doesn't make any sense. Let's break this down. And it's very popular within the ufology community. And so back in 2007 and 2008, a member there called Jose Camacho, he had posted video there of a video that had been sent to him. He had been asked to go to a film studio where a video footage of an alleged alien basically had been seen in a person's garden. The person was Jose. And when he went to this film studio, he saw this film, and they wanted him to say, hey, this is an alien, this is an extraterrestrial. We want you to confirm that this is the case. But because he was quite skeptical in regards to his view of this, he was like, no, I'm not going to say it's one way or the other. I'd like to actually interview the person whose video this is. And he got some footage of that time. He spoke to Jose, and he said he was very scared, very upset. He was very worried about what this was. And then in the March or February of 2008, we showed at the MUFON conference. And at that conference, it really was a who's who at the time. Roger Lear was there, Brad Sparks, Chuck Modlin, George Knapp, George Norrie was there. So this got a lot of traction by the entire ufology community of what this creature was walking across someone's garden, because of course no one had ever seen anything like this. But on Above Top Secret, they were kind of like talking, wait, this isn't real. We think this has been done and constructed like this. So I was able to go back to those posts and see how they thought it was constructed. So what I did is I made a Nightcrawler. I made it. I went out to the woods. I used a similar kind of fabric. I went through some trial and error with its kind of legs and its stepping motions. And I was able to actually work out and create a facsimile of that. The Nightcrawler is really interesting because what I was seeing the last year or so was a lot of traction, particularly on like the short form social media like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, videos that were literally getting their hundreds of millions of views. kind of recycling a lot of this footage back from 2007, 2008. There's one in 2011, which is quite good, actually. It appears to be. It's from Yosemite Park, where it's a kind of tilted CCTV camera footage, and it appears to be crossing two bushes, basically. But the footage is really interesting. It appears to step with a kind of weight in its foot as it moves across. And then there was some more video footage as it came up. 2016 in Poland, there was another one that was quite poor. Then 2018, when I was first asked to speak on behalf of ASAP, and I was like, I need to re-tap into this and, make the video and show how it was done, because I'm not going to say I was jealous about how popular these videos were getting, but I was like, someone needs to actually put this together in a constructive way that makes sense that anyone can view and go, we can see the archive, we can see the kind of verifiable data from the first video to the second, and how it became popular, why it became popular, and actually how it was done. So it was kind of a scene of a point of reference, and they can kind of be that at that point, a done and dusted topic that anyone can then use as a reference video. That was kind of my feeling when I went into creating The Secret of the Nightcrawler.
So when you created it, you created like a literal physical robotic machine with fabric over it, and okay. And did you add any kind of effects to it, like pixelation or?
No. I physically made this. This is a real. So it's made remarkably using a pair of silk trousers, attached to a coat hanger, and how it was done. I was so surprised at how easy it was done that I was just in my kitchen. I was like, I literally got a clothesline, because I thought that how it was clearly done is it's a clothesline that's slightly out of camera shot, and they're just pulling it along on a kind of loop. And I was like, let me just recreate this. So I strung the washing line around a covered handle in my kitchen. Anyway, I put this on, put the coat hanger on this washing line. I picked it up, and then all of a sudden, one of the legs moved, and it was like, wow. I thought I would have to kind of puppet the legs like a marionette. I didn't need to do that at all. All I had to do literally was just shimmy left and right with the washing line, and its feet move absolutely perfectly. It literally moves like the Nightcrawler does in all those videos. It was so good. I was like, damn, this is exactly how it was done. No fancy gadgetry needed. So over the course of a couple of days, I went to my local park at midnight. I strapped it around a goal and got it to walk. The problem was I got there and my night vision camera didn't work. Out of all the things, I was like, no. So then I went.
It's a bit trippy for any dog walkers at a distance. Like, what the hell is going on with that?
It's the best dog in park out, I bet they thought.
It was, because this was like midnight. And I wanted to deliberately stay away from everyone. No buses nearby, no cars. And there was these two walkers who walked past. You just see their eyes are transfixed on what I was doing. Here's me with this pair of trousers attached to a goal, walking this thing along with a lady I'm with. I've got an A camera set up, and I've got a high-vis vest on, so I look sort of official. And you can see them looking down at me going, what are you doing down there? What are you doing?
You can get away with anything in a high-vis vest, isn't it? The best way to kind of like do a bank robbery is to like wear a high-vis vest and make it look...
Leather.
Yeah. Where can people, if people want to see the original video and then your video, where can you direct them to?
The original video is available online. Where do I have a link to that? I believe I do. So in my video, I've certainly beneath it, I've got all the sources within that. And on my website, I've got a video. I've got a blog called Behind the Secret of the Nightcrawler, and I've got all the links that are in there.
It's your website quickly.
Yes, and my website literally is kristianlander.com. So I own my own domain. So it's really interesting. Most of the video footage that you will find online of the Nightcrawler actually is a derivative footage of basically a hand cam that is at that MUFON conference. So once someone basically had a web hand cam there, was recording the video that Victor Camacho was showing there as a documentary. So basically the most of the footage you'll see of Nightcrawlers online are actually all that particular hand cam footage recording that video. That documentary isn't that bad, actually. It's worth tracking down. So if you go on YouTube, you'll find there's a YouTube person called @RogueAlien. He's a US war veteran, actually. He's a former Air Force pilot. So he's the person who recorded that with a hand cam. youtube.com at Rogue Alien. And again, he's done quite a few videos over time, but it's certainly the one that's got the most footage. It's got like 34,000 views or whatever. So it's worth looking at that one.
So there was one that I saw in your presentation where you showed the various clips, and I think it was like 2 night crawlers coming down the street, like a papa and a kid version of a night crawler. And I was thinking, well, if this is your pulley system, that's going to be complicated doing 2 of them, isn't it? Really?
So on the particular video you're talking about, it's right. It's basically there's a bush either side of it. There's like a tree or some kind of shrubbery either side, and the camera is kind of tilted, sort of like 20 degrees to the left. So basically, the idea of having these bushes either side, it can actually hide anybody who's there. And then the character walks from one side to the other, like between the trees or between the 2 bushes. So I think if you've got a mate there who's willing to do it with you, it's pretty easy to do if there's 2 of you.
The only thing that I would say, and I'm saying this from memory, I've really got to relook at the footage again, is that your footage displays the pair of trousers swinging backwards and forwards as they're coming down your pulley line from one tree to another or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you the legs are flaying, aren't they? Or did you weight down the feet?
I did, yes.
Legs.
So I know exactly what you're talking about here. It's the problem I actually had initially. So in my living room here, and again at that field when I first tried it, the legs weren't weighted. So what I'd actually done, I got hold of. I went back to those original video footages on Above Top Secret about how they thought it was done, and their suggestion was that actually in the US, you have baseball, right, with the long baseballs, but you actually have these half-size baseball bats, right, basically called hand bats. And that's what they believe was inside each of the legs at the very bottom.
To keep it sturdy. Like
yes, we don't have that here. So I was like, what can I use? So what I did use, I actually got a kitchen roll tube on the inside, so they're about 1 foot long. And I was able to put a hair tie at the bottom and the top of the tube, and then just attach pegs to it to kind of create a weight. And as I added more pegs, it actually looked like it was more... because I filmed it in a woodland and there was a lot of wild grass around. So the problem I had, even when filming, is actually it would actually catch on the grass. So I had to actually find a way, actually, of making it more heavier, so I attached more pegs to it. And when I pulled it, actually, it then fixed that problem. I was able to walk fine. Of course, in those original videos from the US, of course, Jose's footage and the ones from Yosemite Park, of course, they're shot on clearly lawns. It's perfect. It looks really nice.
So the original witness was alerted because he heard noises outside or something, and he thought, "What the hell's that?" And he came out, and that's when he spotted these night crawlers going down the street. Is that right?
Well, so no, it's in his garden actually. So he said, I think it was his dog was reacting to something in the environment. So and then he went out and bought CCTV camera, and had it in his bedroom window, looking out at his garden. And that's when he said that he was looking at the footage, and that's when he got scared, as this being kind of crossed the garden.
Right.
The very first one is really, really tall, and if you only use the coat hanger, it actually does create that kind of drape effect of the legs, and it's not very animated. On the same piece of footage, it's like 4 minutes later, so clearly it's enough time to basically go back outside, get it, take it all the way back to the other end of the garden, come back upstairs and do it again.
So do you think he was faking it himself?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Not necessarily faking it, but he created something interesting. And the second is one long video, but it's 2 clips of it. The second clip of it is clearly it's making much bigger strides. It's much clearer that it's moving left to right across the garden. So you can see the fabric moving much easier. And with my own pair of trousers, or my partner's pair of pajamas, it kind of replicates that really effectively.
So do you think, kind of hand on heart, this is definitely a hoax, or do you think kind of like you've reproduced it, but who knows, there might be something behind it? What's your feeling?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a cryptid. What has happened though is the kind of cryptid tourism has taken over, the kind of the paranormal economy. It's now actually become like Nessie is like Champ, it's like Bigfoot. It's now actually got, it's got merchandise, sort of.
It's grown legs, as they say.
It's some Steve eyes now. It's quite cute. I've seen plushies. So I think if we were to take it away from the community and show that it's not that, would it invalidate that entire market that exists? No, I don't think so. But no, I don't think it's a being of any kind. I don't think it's an alien of any kind. But what is really interesting is we're actually watching live folklore evolve. You know, in the very first video, it could have been an alien. Then suddenly there was two, and then so technically it's got a child, it's got a twin. And later ones, you know, it's like the story has evolved. You know, it's now got eyes. You know, it's kind of the folklore of the Nightcrawler has evolved. And that's what I was saying to you a few minutes ago. I was asked by ASAP to put another presentation together on any topic I liked. So I was looking at the phenomena in Nottingham, which is where I live. And I came across a story you may well be aware of. There's a place called George's Lane. It's north of Nottingham, a place called Calverton. And basically, it's a long stretch of kind of winding road that goes through the countryside. And the most related phenomena there is cases go back to the 1930s and the 1970s in particular, where the driver would look in the rearview mirror and they'd see someone sat in the back of his car, usually wearing a black robe or whatever. When I was looking at these cases, I found a case from around 1974 of a pair of trousers running at the side of the street along that very road. And I was like, if only I'd have found that a few weeks ago.
Oh, bloody hell. It's Wallace and Gromit, the wrong trousers. So, but the other clips then, apart from the original one of the Nightcrawler, there was other clips that were surfacing later on by other people. Do you think they were like, it was literally other people or the same person doing the clip?
No, I think the first one clearly is done by Jose, the one who lives in that particular house.
Yeah.
The most famous one, the one that is most clearest, is from 2011, which is in the Yosemite National Park, where there is it's a guy who. The story actually is really quite interesting. It's CCTV of a person's house, and it's kind of looking at their car. The two figures happen to go past the back of the car between two bushes. They take that footage and they show it to a friend of theirs who happens to be a YouTuber who makes paranormal videos. So they showed it to him and says, hey, you know, you might be really interested in this piece of footage. And in that piece of footage, in his description, and again, I'll link that to you in a second, the description is quite clear. He says, this looks like the same kind of creatures that was the Nightcrawler from 2007. So he clearly was aware of that piece of footage, and he says, hey, this is what I think it is. But now it appears to be two of them. So he's making those comments. So I don't necessarily think that he was the hoaxer, should we say, or the creator, but he clearly was the one who's he was given the video by the CCTV owners. So there is actually a chain of custody, should we say. And that video's got like 74 million views on YouTube or whatever. Something crazy.
I think we better do a Nightcrawler video, Andy.
One of the biggest problems is like, I think this would be less of a thing in 2007, but certainly now CGI and AI is so advanced, it is incredibly difficult to work out, even if something like a cryptid did exist, what would be credible, genuine footage and what would be something that's AI. 2007, it sounds like it would be like a mechanical thing that would be used as a hoax, but AI these days is so good, you can't tell.
It is.
Which makes our lives difficult.
I know there was a piece of footage a few days ago, and I posted it to the asset page, and it's got a bit of traction over the course of the last week or so, and it shows the original footage clearly was someone at the side of a boat. It's clearly out at sea or out in the ocean, sorry, and there what begins to be a whale that comes next to the boat, and the person reaches out, and then the footage kind of takes a bit of a change, and then basically a UFO exits the water, flies up in the sky and flies off. And the only reason you can tell it's an AI generated video at a certain point, because clearly it was original footage that has then become an AI piece of footage, is the person's hand goes at a really awkward angle, so that where the arm is reaching out to clearly touch the whale effectively, which forms the basis of the dome, shall we say, where it transposes to the UFO video, the arm takes an unnatural right turn. If that wasn't there, it would be even more convincing. And it's actually quite a good video for the sake of it.
Well, I've noticed that. I've been looking at a lot of these videos coming online lately, and it's like, oh, this is the best footage. And it even shows the footage from different angles that various witnesses have allegedly filmed it from different angles. But, I mean, it seems to me that whoever's faking these videos has kind of clearly thought all that through, saying, okay, I need to have a shot that slightly goes out of focus now and again. I need to at least cover it from 3 different angles to give the impression that it's really there. So I'll just go and film my street from 4 different corner points, and then I'll add the same UFO later on. And they put it up saying, well, it clearly is a real UFO because it's filmed from all these different angles, and you can hear people in the street saying, hey, man, or something like that, even though they don't seem to be referring directly to the UFO. He's got some sort of soundtrack that appears to be noise and stuff in the background, but it's the UFOs are looking so crystal clear. Whereas in the 70s, when you got a photograph of UFO, it'd always be a bit grainy and fuzzy because they're normally fixed focused cameras like Kodak brownies and things they're trying to take them with. Whereas today you can get all these telephoto lenses and fast field photography and all sorts of things, and it always looks too perfect. I mean, what would you think to that, Kristian? Is that a kind of a fair argument?
Yeah, there is. There's 2 points I'd like to make about that. So one is you make a really interesting point where it's like 4 cameras. People these days are really smart filmmakers. Everyone now wants to actually be an influencer, a viral video maker, particularly, shall we say, the younger life, Gen Z, Gen X, whatever they're called. They want to become popular. And I don't blame them, because some of the videos are fascinating. You watch some of the TikTok videos or YouTube shorts, some are smart, some are funny, some are well made, and you're going, wow, that was really cool. I like that. I'm going to keep watching this. So I think the idea is that people want to become a video content creator because it's so easy to do. We've all got a phone, the software is very good. It's in the cloud. You can make phenomenal videos really easily, really cheaply because the software is available to do so. The other side of it is when you talked about people a few years ago were making videos, it was very difficult to tell if they were hoaxed or where they were put together. You're right. I think it was certainly much harder to do. Cameras were certainly a bit more rigid. There was a lot more formulaic, shall we say. But do you remember perhaps early 2010s when there was a particular viral video going around where people thought there was skyquakes going on? There was these trumpets in the skies. Do you remember that? So
I do.
And there was lots of people they were looking up at the sky, and there was sky trumpets. Is it the end of the world? Is it the angels coming? And there was about 4 particular videos that would always get shared. And then there was one where this dog was reacting. Oh, do you hear that? Do you hear what's going on? So it looks real. And I think it was Hayley Stevens on her blog, Hayley's a Ghost. And it's actually the same soundtrack on all these different videos. It says there's a particular bird that makes a tweet in it. That happens to be in all the videos.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's the easiest way of finding out.
There, everyone would think these sky trumpets were real, then the Anunnaki are coming or whatever, or the angels are here, or the end of the world is coming. But no, if it wasn't for that pretty distinct bird that tweets in there, it would have been very good.
So what is your take on the paranormal? I mean, it sounds like you're a fair investigator and you try and look at it from all the different angles, but do you actually believe in such things, for instance, as ghosts, or do you think it's just make-believe or something?
It's a good question, actually. I guess my mother experienced what she claimed to be ghosts when she was a young girl. So I guess that kind of that filtered into me being fascinated by those accounts. I came across Reader's Digest books as a kid. I came across the Osborne Book of Ghosts, as we all did. And I was fascinated by these accounts that are out there that it happened to people. And particularly when often someone who's had an encounter and you believe them because they believe that the encounter happened. So I found myself wanting to believe them. And over time, I've had a few encounters with things that I don't understand or explain. And I don't tend to share them too often, the ones that I do. And I kind of like it from a kind of grounded perspective. What did I see? And how do I know what I saw was real? And was there other things that could have influenced me? And that's kind of how I would approach a conversation with someone. Have you taken in all the variables? Could you consider this? Would this have been a possibility? And you can kind of go, oh yeah, maybe. That's quite interesting. I didn't think of it that way. That's how I've looked at some of my own encounters, should we say. And I think it's an interesting way to take it. But do I believe there are ghosts out there? I personally think we're not necessarily looking at ghosts of the dead. I think somehow we look at it some kind of time anomaly that might be happening. I think we're looking at some kind of almost natural phenomena that appears to be moving through our environment, and somehow there's an interaction between our mind, the environment, and perhaps whether it be temperature or electromagnetic anomaly. And people, when we talk about ghost phenomena, we're talking about UFOs, beings, portals. I think we're using too many words for what potentially might be the same phenomena happening. There might well be a natural phenomena occurring in our environment. But what that is, I don't know.
Now that reminds me of the one of my favorite ghost stories is the guy that was the plumber in York, and I've said it a number of times on our channel and I've written about it, and that was a guy called Harry Martindale, who in 1953 was an apprentice plumber. He's like 16 or 17 years old at the time, his first ever job, and it was an English heritage kind of commission to basically renovate this chancellor's house, I think in York, and he was tasked with going down into the basement and drilling holes basically for some pipes for central heating to be installed. And he put his ladder in a trench that he found in the basement, not knowing that a few months earlier, archaeologists had dug this trench themselves and found a Roman road below this chancellor's house, which was like from the 1700s or something. So that it had a history, history beneath the house. And he didn't know that, of course. So he thought it was a great place to wedge his ladder and secure it. And he went up his ladder, spent about 4 hours drilling away these holes. And after a while, he heard the sound of a trumpet or a horn, oddly enough. And he thought, what the bloody hell's that? And he said, it was just one note. And he thought, that's a bit of an awful song on the radio that someone's playing. So he could hear something, which is interesting. And eventually it got louder and louder and louder. And before you knew it, he suddenly looked down and he said a Roman soldier appeared below him because he was about 8 or 9 feet up on the ladder. And it came through on a horse and followed by about another 10 Roman soldiers. And the very last Roman soldier to come through was the guy blowing a great big horn. And they appeared to be walking on the Roman road. But he was so scared by his experience that he fell over off his ladder and he hid into the corner of the basement, hoping that he wouldn't be seen by them. And he said they was as solid as anything, except, he said, their legs disappeared. But when they approached and came through to the Roman road section, which had been excavated, their 4 legs appeared, which is interesting. And they appeared not to notice him. They just carried on with their task of what they were doing. He said he could even hear them talk. And he said they could see them unshaven. They weren't like pristine condition. And they were covered in mud splatters and things like that. Now, this was in like November, I think, of 1953. And the Romans were covered in mud splatters. And what you talk about, is it some sort of time anomaly? I wondered, because the same Romans were seen like about 7 years later by a lady in the house. Her dogs actually spotted them first of all, and they were barking. So it was, independent witnesses, but they were dogs. But this lady spotted them, but she was upstairs looking down into the basement and saw the Romans from a different angle. But this time, instead of Romans repeating in the same action, they were asleep on the horse. Like they'd all dozed off on the horses, were marching them back to their base or something, and the horses knew where to go. But the Romans were fast asleep, so they were doing a slightly different action. And she saw them in the February of 1957 or something like that. So again, it's the winter months. So my kind of hypothesis on that was that they were somehow peering through time to the same time period, the same day or the same season, if you like, back to, say, 1,000 years before, because it was their winter's day 1,000 years before, hence the covered in mud, the rain splatters and things like that. And they were walking on that road. So they're almost like grooves of record at different points in time, and the record jumped, if you like, and he saw into that period of time like the lady did. They weren't spirits of the dead, although clearly those Romans had died a long, long time ago. There is what they call the stone tape theory. I'm sure you've heard of that one, where they think that it's like a recording. But my thing is that I don't think it was a recording because it's separate actions on different times. Otherwise, the lady who saw it like a few years later would have seen exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's what I consider that like a time anomaly. And they didn't appear to be aware of him. So it's more like a recording, if you like, or appearing through a time window. And there's been cases where people from the past have seen the people of the future. Irene Allen has said that she was walking around her son's house. He was showing her around and she went into the top floor and came face to face with a maid from like the Victorian times or something. The maid gasped in fright as she spotted Irene. As Irene's jaw dropped at the same time, and then suddenly the maid disappeared. It's almost they spotted each other, and they were intruders into each time period. It's a very weird thing going on, but, you know.
So one of the projects I'm currently looking at is this phenomenal Nottinghamshire thing. One of the accounts actually mirrors that encounter what you just said there exactly. So there's a place in Nottinghamshire called Linby. Really, I would call it the village of the 14 because every kind of 14 weird anomaly is reported to have happened in this village. So I'm there with a particular lady who was she was walking me through the encounter that she had, where she walked across this field from Linby to Papplewick, and she says, "Well, I was stood here," and she says, "I looked down here, and there was 3 men behind this bush, but they were all dressed like roundhead soldiers. One even had a pike, but they were holding it down, and they were cowering down, and were hiding behind this bush. And as I went round to look, I could see that they were focused in the field." And over there, there was a man on a horseback, and he had a sword in a scabbard down the side, and he was looking out, trying to find out where these people were. But then I looked down at these 3 soldiers, and we made eye contact, and he jumped and fell over. He'd never seen someone like me, and then all of a sudden the scene vanished.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible, isn't it? Yeah. So what did you think? That was a time anomaly or something?
It was a time anomaly, yeah. There's I don't think they clearly. I don't know what the trigger is. I don't know what the mechanism is behind it, but I find it really fascinating.
It's interesting. Now, what's the Thunderbolt incident from November 1987 that you've been associated with?
Okay, so most people who touch my name would tend to find that as the kind of main story that I'm perhaps most, I hate to use the word famous, but it's the most associated account. So in 1987, there is an account in a town that's not too far from here called Sutton-in-Ashfield, though it's actually closely more Kirkby. If you know what Mansfield is, it's on that road. It's on the A60. So in 1987, it is November the 12th. It's 1:30 in the morning. Everyone in the village, and I've spoken to many people, they will all know about the explosion that happened. Most people associate with the explosion as the UFO. Mainly because there was an Ashfield councillor who says, "Hey, what we saw, it sounded like the Blitz. It hit multiple houses, loads of windows down a particular street. Some were blown in, some were blown out. There's a metal slide was melted. All the TV aerials along this particular stretch were melted and damaged and burned. Loads of trees were burned, and loads of woodland. What was identified was that this craft, should we say, came down in a place called Thieves Wood. It then took off again. Actually, the definition that's always used is it bounced. So it hit the ground, came up again, and then crashed into an area called Annesley Hollow, which actually is the same grounds as Annesley Hall. So how I found out about this case was through a number of people who not only they had lived it, they had experienced that case. It wasn't too far from me. So 2 particular individuals who were part of that case. So one was a gentleman called Alan Smith. He was a National Express bus driver. He told me that he used to drive the buses, basically the coaches from Nottingham up to Mansfield, up to Sheffield and so on a daily basis, 6:30 in the morning. And he says that one particular time he was travelling up the A60 and first thing in the morning, no passengers on board. And right in front of him, he said that there was a HGV, a flatback lorry, and on the back of it was something strapped down, covered in black tarpaulin, but it was flanked by police and military. This particular area on this day happened. The military, police, and they locked down this area for 4 days after this. So there was there was Chinooks, there was helicopters. So there was a Chinook, sorry. There was lynxes and gazelles that came over. They were searching for debris. A particular house was hit. A chimney got destroyed. I speak to the people who replaced that chimney. There was another house that was hit and had subsidence happen to it. The building had to be demolished. In fact, the wallpaper and all the bricks inside the upper floor of this house were all burned on the inside. The roof got covered in a silver material. The Department of Investigations, Special Investigations from London came up and took samples of that silver metallic substance and material. Where the video where this craft came down in Thieves Woods. There's a 90-foot burn zone basically on the ground. They ripped up all the ground. They covered it in clay. They re-put a new soil in there. The Forestry Commission put silver birch down there and these rows of trees down there to replace what had happened. So really interesting case because everyone remembers how the streets were all locked down. I've got reports from that time where all the taxis all had to be redirected around that area. And so we had a fascinating, not a UFO case that was kind of dismissed, despite the fact that that a lot of evidence happened, that something happened, that something came down, and then it was replaced, and it was moved. One of the ladies who came to me, she said she lived opposite the fire chief of that time. So the head fire marshal, she lived opposite his house. She was 12 years old at the time. She can remember the crash happening. She said that it sounded like Lockerbie happening because that was still quite fresh in the mind of people at that time. They thought a massive vehicle had come down. Although I've got 54 accounts of people who heard the explosion. Only 5 people saw something that night, and all 5 of them say something completely different about what the object was in the sky. As such, there's a number of reports that are out there, but there are actually only 3 that have ever been published. One ended up in a Nexus magazine, one was on Stephen Greer's website, and one was in a book by John King called Cosmic Top Secret, a book I've got here. In above Top Secret, he was talking to 2 members of Before at the time called Andrew Emerson and Dominic Belgin, and they had been on site a week later, and they made a report of that. They took photos, they took reports of what they saw, the clay that was underneath, and so on. So we have a really fascinating, really detailed case of a UFO that came down. And as such, what's most remembered about it is actually this happened the same time as the Battle of Britain was airing on Central TV, as the raid happened on England. So the explosion happened. This is what's most remembered about this particular case. As the Battle of Britain happened, all of a sudden the house starts vibrating and rumbling. But then, for most people in that area, they either don't want to talk about it, or the ones that do, it was a UFO that happened. The government and the Met Office agree that it was a bolt from the blue, and they did not pay out any insurance. The insurance for this area was not paid off because it was an act of God. It was an act of weather. But what actually turns out to be the case is that I spoke to a lady whose partner was a Chinook pilot who landed the Chinook in this field that happened there. And her report of what he told her is that a Harrier jump jet came down. Because, of course, in Nottingham, we have Scranton's not too far away, and the Harrier jump jet was developed at Rolls-Royce Aerospace, which, again, is literally just behind my house. What came down was a pilot that did a loop-to-loop in a Harrier, which is not the easiest of things to do, and he'd actually come out of his loop too low. The Sherwood Observatory, for instance, has just opened this week. Massive kind of big thing happening up there, because this area has the same elevation of height as the Ural Mountains do in Russia. This place is really quite high. In 1987, it's not very well built up. There's only a handful of kind of scrappy kind of areas of housing. So the perception is that the pilot didn't know how low he was when he came out of his loop. He then pulled up, realizing that he was over a residential estate, pulled up, and his burner basically is what burned the back of the houses. And that report comes to me from only one account, from a lady called Rachel Mason, who says that she lived at the end of this street. She was 12 years old at the time. She heard the explosion happen down the street. She sat up in bed, looked out the window, and she saw a plane come over her house. The whole house rumbled, the whole house vibrated. And she saw a plane come over, and that plane came down in the wood and took off again, but its back wing, so the aileron on the very back, was damaged, and then it veered back off again and then crashed in the ground. So her view is it was a plane. I know what it was. It looked like the afterburner of a plane. It was an orange ring that came over my house, and she remembers what she saw. But everyone else never saw that view. They only saw the 2 buildings that were hit, and of course there was a massive explosion and UFOs happened. The explosion happened to be a boiler of an upstairs flat of a guy called Les, and he ended up on the news the following day on Central TV saying that a UFO hit my house. He had gone remarkably, he'd gone into the kitchen to make himself a cup of tea. And had he not done that, he'd have been in his living room where the back boiler of the living room, the kind of the chimney breast effectively, was superheated by the burner of this plane. And it caused all the bricks in that to fly out into the living room. And had he not done that, he wouldn't be with us. But it's a remarkable story that goes from being a UFO case. It has an in-between bit in the center, because what happens is that 3 Russians turn up at this guy's house. And this is 1987. So the guy whose house was hit and kind of got nudged over, that kind of had subsidence, all the kind of doors in the house all got tipped to the side. He was very angry, he's very upset. He goes down to where the crash site is, where all this military is, and the police are. He gets told to go away a number of times. They tell him, hey, if you keep doing this, we're going to basically ring you in for harassment. You're going to get arrested. Never going to see your family again. So this was dead secret, because all we know there is, and all of a sudden, you got the Department of Special Investigations have come into this house, taking this silver material off his roof and telling it to be chaff. And then these 3 Russians stood up 3 days later going, what's going on here? Scared him to the point he never spoke about it again after that. I managed to speak to his carer, because he's unfortunately on a dementia care home at the present time. And the person who was his carer, who lived at house with him, of course, lived through that experience with him. But so it's a phenomenal story that goes from one extreme to another, but it has a grounded story. And the intriguing point is the government and the Met Office still refuses to acknowledge the plane happening, because otherwise they'd still have to pay out for the insurance. So the government continued to make note that it was a weather incident, that it was a UFO case, so they didn't have to pay out for insurance.
Because I was going to ask, if it was an air crash of like a Harrier jump jet, I would presume that the pilot would eject once he's in trouble, and all ejections are logged. And air crashes are logged, and then there's an air crash investigation unit, like from Farnborough or something like that, would come up and look at it. Which, you're cordon off the area, and you wouldn't pile a load of trees up and silver birches and things, and you go around trying to find all the bits of the aircraft and try and think, well, which bit was it that caused this to go wrong or something? Faulty instrument panel, pilot error, and they collect it all together and they'd lay it all out in their hangar, all the bits, like they did with Lockerbie or whatever, didn't they?
Yes. Yeah. That happened, but I guess that did happen behind closed doors. What doesn't happen anywhere, because it would mean they're culpable to the events that happened.
So this is what I think Ben's actually travelled up to that area, and I think I referred it to the Nottinghamshire Roswell or something he called it.
That's what this case is. Everyone would call it the Notts Roswell, but yeah, people have started peeling it back. The stories, started talking to people, finding out accounts when Rachel Mason came forward to me and said, hey, I saw a plane come down. And there was this particular lady, she said that she was pregnant actually at the time, and she was sat on her living room floor. There was a table in front of her. Her family were playing the game of life, and she could see out of the bay window. And she says the whole house started to vibrate, and she looked, and she was the only one who has the perspective of looking out this bay window. And she says this green triangle, looked like a Christmas tree. It was all illuminated from the underneath. Came over the house. It was rumble as it went over. And then I realized it was a plane, but it was literally above the house.
Wow, that's incredible. Whatever it is, it's an incredible thing. Be interesting to see if there's any other videos out there on there. Right, I think we'll have to draw this to a close now, but as it's our Christmas edition, we'd like to find out what your plans are for next year, if you've got any, paranormal-wise or whatever, and what are your plans for Christmas?
What are my plans for Christmas? That's a very good question, actually. Christmas, I guess, is only a month away. I work in the field of retail leadership, as they say. So Christmas for me right now has been bombarded on me since July. And I think I'm going to be quite happy to have Christmas without any Christmas lights. I'll just not see Christmas boxes and displays set up. And I'm probably going to go to my partner's family. They tend to have a rather big Christmas dinner, as it were. That's always quite good fun to have family and friends over, and trying to get in touch with the people that we don't always get to see. That is the best thing about this period of time. whether it be Yule, whether it be Hanukkah, or whatever people celebrate at this time of year as well. It's good to just reconnect with family, reconnect with friends. And I think going forward for 2025, that is the one thing I want to do. I'm very much aware. I've kind of not hermetized myself this year. I've made a lot of contacts. I'm more people than ever, and I don't necessarily spend the time getting around to catching up with everyone. And that's, I think, going to be my commitment like next year, 2025, is to make sure I do that.
I mean, I know you got out in 2024 with a pair of trousers and a coat hanger, but it's not quite the same social life, really, is it?
No, it's not.
All right. Well, thank you very much indeed, Kristian Lander. We look forward to more reports coming from you in the future. And will you be speaking at ASAP in the near future? I know you did a live presentation for them a few weeks back, and will you be doing anything at their next conference, maybe?
Quite possibly. It all depends whether ASAP survives its current situation internally. I think the webinars will certainly continue. I think presentations certainly will, and I think it will exist in some form next year. But hopefully, it's not in the guise that it currently is.
Oh, well, let's hope it morphs into something more coherent and better for everyone. And may the best of it continue, whatever form it goes on.
Certainly.
So that was Kristian Lander there talking to us about the night crawlers and also the Nottinghamshire Roswell crash. Ben, you went up there a couple of years ago. You went up there twice, didn't you, to investigate this alleged crash of something in Nottinghamshire?
Yes, very much so. In fact, I can't take credit for researching this because I was assisted by two local ufologists. This is Daniel Bostock and Nigel Crowley. And without their input, I would have had nowhere to go with this. What I did was essentially reopened a case that had been kind of forgotten. It was first emerged it was actually took place in 1987, in November of 1987, in which there was it began with a loud explosive noise in the skies above a place called, it's a region around Kirkby and Ashfield, Mansfield, and that area in north of the city of Nottingham. And this was followed by all kinds of stories about what happened next. But we know a lot of damage was done to the local area. Buildings were damaged by the shockwave and things like that. I very much wish I could have been involved in the interview with Kristian, but unfortunately, I think I was just too tired. It was
that's okay. You're busy.
I think I'm overdoing it a bit. Actually, I need to slow down. But I myself interviewed Kristian over this issue a few years ago, and he himself has done his own series of research into this. We have come to different conclusions about what caused this. Kristian believes it was some kind of accident involving a Harrier jump jet, I believe, and I didn't think that quite fitted with the evidence. I can't remember all the details about what we discussed, but I suspect what I thought happened was based on eyewitness testimony and other things. I mean, a good resource is actually as always, Nexus magazine, greatest magazine in the world for this sort of thing. It did a piece about this, written by, what's his name, an Australian researcher whose name I can't think of. Joe Viles. A piece written by Joe Viles, an Australian researcher, about this. And what I suspect happened was an unknown object, some kind of flying object, emerged in the area and actually came to grief on the Earth's surface. It landed at a place called Thieves Wood, and resulted in a large fire. It then took off back into the air and eventually came to rest at a place called Annesley Hall, which is a derelict stately home, not far from the M1, just near on one of the junctions of the M1. This was then gathered. It was this object, whatever it was taken away by the government. We don't have many details. We don't have many details about what this object was, what it looked like. But it appears there was a Roswell type. There was a Roswell type response to this. But it's an extremely interesting case, and the reasons why I didn't quite go with Kristian's idea was he brings up evidence such as the possible effects of the jet exhaust on several areas, which doesn't quite fit. I mean, in terms of the heat effects and things like that. And I can't remember the details, but I'm sure Kristian explained in his interview what the details were. But I did disagree with him on that. But we had a good discussion about it.
Well, for anyone that's interested, they can kind of see your point of view. Go to your website at what's your website then?
Hapanwo, HPANWO, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. If you go there, go to Hapanwo Radio and just put Kristian's name into the search box, and you'll see there are, I think, 3 interviews I did with him on various subjects.
So they can also look for the Nottinghamshire Roswell with Ben Emlyn-Jones on your.
Oh, that's on you. That's on
your
YouTube.
own case field work there.
Yeah, that's on
Hapanwo
TV.
Bits. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So Ben, what have you got lined up for Christmas?
I'm going to basically have a rest, and I'm going to just probably go to my daughter's house because she's having a kind of little get together with her friends, and she's inviting me around because everyone else in my family is going to be away, and so I'm going to go and spend the day with her. And
that's nice. Excellent. And what plans you got for next year?
So many I can't really tell because I think we don't really have time to go into, but I'm speaking at a couple of events. I'm speaking at the Birmingham UFO group. I'm speaking at the Dorset Earth Mysteries group. I'm hoping to go back to Contact in the Deserts. I'd love to go there again. And a couple of other things I've got in line. Can't think of them off the top of my head.
Great. Okay. Andy, so what's your plans for Christmas and what you're doing in the new year as plans are?
Christmas, not a lot, just relaxing, I think, watching TV, eating lots of food, getting drunk, usual. Plans for New Year, expand Tuned In events. So at this point, if anyone wants to join Tuned with a D, Tuned In events on Facebook, Instagram, etc., then we've got quite a lot of things going on for Christmas period. Then it kind of dies out in January, goes a bit dead, and then it picks up again, usually around about February time. We're doing more psychic suppers. They tend to be doing quite well. So people sit down, eat some food, and kind of mediums do their thing. So yeah, maybe a few more of them for next year.
Excellent. And Gary, are you going back to Mexico in the new year, or are you staying in Hemel Hempstead?
You know what? I'm going to be in Hemel Hempstead for Christmas. It's going to be a quiet one.
Are you going to make it on the Magic Roundabout?
Yeah.
A little bit of ayahuasca to help him round it.
Sorry, Neil.
I was going to say, it's amazing how many people get scared of that Magic Roundabout.
It's very confusing.
I was confused initially when I first went round there, but once I realised how to approach it, it was actually quite easy. Because what happens, the mistake people make, they somehow take the centre part of it thinking that's a roundabout. It's not. That's just the verge. And you just treat each roundabout as a separate roundabout. That's all you do.
Exactly. If you take someone that's never been on it before and drive through it at high speed and watch their face, I love it. Another country.
Yeah, a lot of people freak out about it. So, it's an interest. It's one of the most really strangest roundabout. Someone really had some ayahuasca when they designed that Hemel Hempstead, didn't they?
It's weird. That's what I do not know.
And what are you doing after Christmas? What are you doing in the new year and plans for 2025?
Well, I'll be busy as always with my label. So I've got I run a label at the moment called Death Ray Music, which is synthwave and drum and bass for anyone who's into those kinds of music. So I've already got a few records in the can that are going to be out early in the new year, one of which has a pretty famous singer called Jasmine Knight. So I'm looking forward to releasing that. I'm also getting quite busy again with production music finally, because, I do a bit of work with TV film through sync licensing, and that whole industry has been pretty quiet for a couple of years because of the Hollywood strikes and the wokeness and the lap, and it's now starting to pick up. These last couple of weeks, I've had a pretty good job on with a couple of tracks that I've made for a client, which I'd love to tell you about, but they made me sign an NDA. Tell you about it on next year's Christmas.
Okay. We're looking forward to that.
Good luck with that, mate. Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm just going to have a quiet Christmas where my daughter's coming to see me at Christmas. She's traveling all the way down from the Orkney Islands, which is nice. So she'll be coming down to Dorset and spending Christmas Day with us and everything. So that'd be lovely. And I will be cracking on with the proofreading of my new book, although I've got the True Tales of the Paranormal out. I'm also working on another book called Unsolved Modern Mysteries, where I look at all these various mysteries from the 20th century and the 21st century. So I cover quite a few variations of different mysteries there, from Bigfoot to Roswell to the MH370 flight to Madeleine McCann, the Oakville blobs, all sorts of weird stuff. So I'm actually going through the proofreading of that now, and that'll be handing back in January. So I'm assuming that book will be out about probably late summer of 2025. And then after that, I'll crack on with my other book projects and illustration projects and all sorts of creative things that I'm doing. So yeah, watch this space.
Before you bring out the new book, we're going to do like a review program, aren't we, of the book you've just published?
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to do that sometime in the new year. We'll be doing that. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, I would like to take this opportunity to wish everybody who listens to the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network a wonderful Christmas and a very happy New Year. And everybody else watching on all other platforms, again, we wish you a very happy New Year and a peaceful Christmas with all your family and friends. And thanks for tuning in to us. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.